All right, I will go ahead and call to order the Town of Essex Select Board meeting for Monday, November 18th. First up, agenda additions or changes. Any additions from staff?
One change from staff, just in addition to item 6A, it's a memo about the Chittenden County Communications Union District. We got some more information today about the length of the term, so I can speak to that when we get to that item, but it's a different term date than was shown in the packet.
Okay, so no changes to the agenda, just
Right.
additional information. Any changes or additions from the board? Okay, no changes, no reason to approve the agenda. We'll move on to public to be heard. Public to be heard is a time for the public to address the select board on items that are on the consent agenda or items that are not on the agenda. If you're in the room, you can raise your physical hand. If you're online, you can raise your virtual hand by clicking the reactions button down in the middle of your screen, and then there will be a raise hand button that comes up at that point. Before we do turn it over to the public, though, I do just want to turn it over to Greg really quickly for a quick announcement.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome and introduce Karen Adams as the Town of Essex's new Deputy Manager. Most recently, Karen was the Director of Technical Services at Colchester Public Works. She also has a background in planning. Really excited to have her here. She emerged from we had a really great pool of candidates for the Deputy Manager. So thrilled to have Karen emerge from that pool. She brings leadership skills, project management skills, grant acquisition and management, lots of technical expertise, and a whole lot more. So excited to have her as part of the team and to start working with her. And I think she's going to be a great asset to the town.
Thank you. Welcome. With that, any
You have a message.
from the public?
Yeah.
Oh,
Logan, it's saying that we're muted.
the audio's off.
All right, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So quick recap, we called to order. There were no additions or changes to the agenda. We are on public to be heard. First item for public to be heard was an announcement that Karen Adams is joining us as our new Deputy Town Manager. And now you're caught up. Sorry about the technical difficulty. Again, if you're in the room, you can raise your physical hand for public to be heard. If you're online, you can raise your virtual hand. There is a reactions icon in the lower middle of your screen. From there, there will be a raise hand feature. So moving right along to public to be heard.
Good evening, Ken Signorello, the Chairperson for Conservation and Trails Committee. At our last Conservation and Trails Committee meeting, we voted on asking the Select Board to approve a new charter which would make us a commission, not knowing that conservation commissions are specified in state statutes. So that's not going to work. So what I'm here to ask you to do, and I can go over reasons why if anybody doesn't know them already, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it unless you really need it, is put on your next agenda an item to act to put on the next town meeting ballot, which is what's required to create a conservation commission as specified in state statutes. That's VSA 24, 4501 to 4506. It's pretty clearly laid out. It gives you a template for the commission's duties and powers, and it's almost exactly what we actually voted on. If you feel it's necessary, I'm happy to get the commission to convene and get a vote on that particular mode of operation, but it's pretty much exactly what we already voted on. So that's my ask. If you have any questions about why we're asking for that, I'm happy to answer them. Nope. That's it. I hope we put it on the next ballot, and we'll be watching for it. The next agenda.
Gotcha. Thanks, Ken. Any other public to be heard? Not seeing anyone online. Well, I'm not seeing any hands online. I'm not seeing any hands on the room. So with that, we will move along to the consent agenda. We will entertain a motion.
I make the motion, we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Dawn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. There is no discussion on consent. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. And just like that, we are on to our first business item, interviewing a volunteer to serve as the Essex representative on the Chittenden County Communications Union District Board. Good evening, Mr. Norton.
Good evening. Yeah, it's like I say, got to stop meeting like this. You know? Anyway, seems that I've been here more frequently than usual. Yeah, I'm Hubie Norton. Live here in Essex for quite a while, and currently on the CCCUD board, and looking to be there again for the next term.
Any questions for Hubie?
Doing an excellent job. So he's been tough competition to beat.
Yeah.
I was gonna thank him for his public service and all his effort he's put into the town of Essex, because, like he just mentioned, when I saw him walk in earlier tonight, I was like, why is Hubie here? What's he here for? Because there's a million things that he's a part of, it seems, with the town. So, thank you for putting forth that time.
Well, you're welcome. Like I say, it's just recently there's been kind of a flurry, but yeah, we're in a transition thing here. So.
Any questions for Hubie?
No, I'm good.
Inferring that we likely won't need to go into executive session to discuss this possible appointment, would someone like to make a
Do
motion?
we need to?
It says we need,
Hold on.
I'm not sure we can, because has the position been advertised?
it says
No, it'll be about 30 days
December
for the
16th.
second meeting in December. And
Will have been advertised for
right,
30
so your
days.
practice is to
December
advertise for 30 days.
Gotcha. Good point.
So, yes, and the other thing is, I just applied today to be the alternate, but since it wasn't on the agenda, we can cover that then as well.
Yeah, so understanding that past practice has been to post positions for 30 days and then appoint. I feel like we've made you come here for absolutely no questions, Hugh.
No.
I do have a question. Why are the terms so different? I mean,
I'm not sure myself. The bylaws of the CCCUD, it's for 2 years. Okay, that's what the bylaws read. So
okay.
this is confusing to me a little bit.
Because,
And
right,
the
if you're
bylaws also specify the date as the end of April, not our typical June 30th.
But, so he just said it was for 2 years. The thing here says January 1st, 2025 to April 1st, 2026. That's not 2 years, right?
Right.
Not by my math, no.
Well, so
No,
I'm
no, yeah,
confused as
right.
why we're,
So if I can speak to that a little bit. So we were planning or expecting it to be a 2-year term starting on January 1st. Andy reminded us that we had to advertise for an alternate. So in researching that, Kate LaRose, the admin assistant, reached out to the CCCUD today to check on the alternate, check on the terms. I guess they've adjusted their schedule. Maybe you can speak to this more, Andy, to end, to have the terms end on April 1st. So I think that's probably when they'll get back onto the 2-year cycle.
Okay.
And that's what this memo is adjusting, is
okay.
the term ending April 1st instead of December 31st.
I thought last time we appointed for more than.
That's what I thought, and I tried to go back and find it in the minutes, and I couldn't find it. Excuse me.
There was confusion because, of course, there are representatives from different towns. Different towns have different processes for making appointments. So they settled on the bylaws to say, okay, it's going to be 2 years for the CCUD, and then however it fits with whatever town that the representative is going to be, that would win the. So again, it's still confusing to me, but it's the bylaws say 2 years. I'm not sure what the start date was. You said that you found that she contacted the bylaw, contacted the clerk.
Your current term ends this December 30th.
Oh, I came here for other reasons too, so.
I'm glad. All right, so I guess with that, we will.
I'll wait to
intend
hear.
on making an appointment at the December 16th meeting.
Okay,
Thanks, Hubie.
thank you.
Oops.
Business item 6B, discussion with Winooski Valley Park District. Come on up.
Evening.
Hello.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. Here for our annual visit and report. I do have some slides I'd love to have up, which is helpful to do our talk. And did you get my materials? You've got our report, and various items. If you have questions from those, that'd be great. I'm just going to do a quick synopsis. Most of you are very familiar with this, but we are an 8-town municipal district. This is Jeff Tice, your trustee. And we have a very active board that meets once a month and is very deeply involved, I must say, in every aspect of our operation.
Yeah, it's an opportunity, excuse me, for me to say thanks again for giving me the opportunity to work with the district. As Nick's saying, it's...
Those who are, might as well just rifle through this. I'm not going to take too much of your time.
It's only 35 slides, right? You got an hour and a half? We can,
We've been around for 50 years, a hybrid municipal corporation and nonprofit, which enables us to raise money and do businesses both. But we're primarily a municipal corporation. You can just keep going right through the slides. You don't have to wait for me. So a map of our parks. We have 18 properties, about 1,700 acres total. All of them are fully owned. We carry no debt. And they are all conserved in perpetuity. So when we take on a property, it is with the intent of conserving it forever. You can't really see this very well, but it's just striking in the lower Winooski, where basically all of our parks are located. There are a significant amount of entities, including towns and nonprofits and various other entities that own conserved land. And it's an ecosystem of groups, and we all work together in different capacities. So we're part of a team effort to conserve the lower Winooski. Next slide. We're highly reliant on leveraging resources. So what you contribute each year, we try to amplify. And we do that in several ways. One is by leveraging a lot of volunteer labor, donated services. We do a lot of grantsmanship. We also act as a fiscal agent for other nonprofits, which is something we've done in the last few years. It's been a very successful model for us. And we also work with the large statewide conservation land agencies and nonprofits to help leverage funds and to put easements into place. You can keep going right through this. This is just some great pictures of recent pictures of the tree planting. Just stunning parks. If you haven't visited, this is a great opportunity to check it out. They're highly popular, especially after the pandemic. We had a lot of people start using our parks, and they've stayed busier since then. It's been a fascinating ramp up.
how many parks currently? I'm stuck on 19, but we're
18.
at 18.
Yep.
Something's always in the works, so
Yes.
it's...
As Jeff mentioned, we have 3 full-time staff, and then we hire seasonal staff, and then we use grant monies to bring in Vermont Youth Conservation Corps and other groups to help us with our projects. And as I mentioned, we act as a fiscal agent. We also do, what I didn't mention is we do contracted work for some of our towns, where we have a very simple formula. Since we carry the same insurance as our member towns, it's a very easy process for us to deploy and assist member towns on their own properties with trail work and repairing bridges and so forth. Just keep it on going. Here are some of our partners that we work with. We own 10 buildings in total. We have a large museum barn at the Ethan Allen Homestead, where a preschool is run, and also the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. We also rent Alnabiwi, that's a statewide Abenaki cultural organization. And we also have 2 caretaker houses at Colchester Pond and Ethan Allen Homestead. And then a number of other tenants that either rent or have deals with us. This is just more of our partners. You can't see that very well, but that's just another representation of our park system broken down by acreage. Just keep on going. Okay, in Essex specifically, it's been a challenging couple years. We've had, with the 3 major floods, and you keep going, the next few slides have some good images. that estimate, actually, we know it was 9 feet of water, if not more, at Woodside. For some hydrological reason, Woodside had the deepest water. We learned a lot about hydrology over the last couple of years. But we're on our third round of mitigation down there. Our brilliant superintendent, every time we go through this, comes up with some new method, some new MacGyver to be able to move stuff back into place. So it's a fancy word, flood mitigation and resilience, but our form of resilience is figuring out how to keep our infrastructure in place afterwards. Keep on going. And here's the crew putting stuff back into place. And this was due for a redeck anyhow, but that was actually originally a YCC project. It's one of my favorite structures in that park. We replaced that this year, new signage up at Overlook. And now we'll go quickly through these. These are the other parks in our system. You can just go a couple seconds on each, just to be representative of what they are and where they are. Disability grant through Vermont Housing Conservation Board, which would enable us to do all the due diligence and some initial design work, look at the permitting, try to see what the barriers might be for that site. But we don't know what the park district's role would be in the future. But anytime, as I told Ken, anytime that you have the potential to get a boat in the water in the lower Winooski, we're all over it. So we're gonna be following this and trying to be helpful all the way through. And it was very encouraging going down there and seeing the site that seems to be above where the floods hit. Seems to have good access to the road. So we're very excited about that. We're in the early stages. Ken and I we're divvying up, dividing and conquering in terms of next steps. And you can stay on this slide for the minute. This is that parcel in Williston that we're working on, which would become our next park, working with Global Foundries on establishing a permanent access through their solar field, which is on the bottom right there. And in deference to Global Foundries, who haven't finished that process yet, but they've been incredibly helpful and cooperative in trying to put it all together. But that would become our newest park, and it's right across the river, so people would have easy access to it. Next slide. And that's it. I want to get you through that quickly. We're very blessed right now. We've got a full board of 8 people, and we've had pretty good retention. We've had people who've been around for a long time. This is your second term. My superintendent's been here for 24 years, operations manager for 14, and I've been here for 11. So we feel like we're in a really good spot now in terms of our staff.
Yeah, I can say on behalf of the board that we cross our fingers that the staff, grand total of 3, stay for indefinite number of years, because the connections, as you all know, the interpersonal connections that are forged that make a lot of this conservation land accessible, the number of people that come to Nick and say, we don't know what to do with this land, and then it's preserved into perpetuity. I'm on the board, and I'm occasionally amazed at how much, as early in the slideshow, the stats were kind of indicating the amount of conserved land, acreage. It's a pretty tiny group that's made a big impact. The last thing I'll say, so I'm not just carrying on you guys' behalf, the amount of time especially Nick's colleague Lauren, the amount of time she spends on the grant research and seeking of additional funding, and the annual success in that to make a lot of this work possible in the land acquisition. I'm always really impressed with that too.
Any questions or concerns?
Questions? Comments?
So you're asking for 2,004.
I'm not avoiding the question. It's based on whatever the actual
No, it's
was
fine.
for the past year, would be the main reason. We also have older vehicles that we're getting repaired. Okay. Increases to fuel costs, increased maintenance needs, costs for vehicles. Yeah, we deferred maintenance.
Okay.
We actually just got a couple ball joints done, and we got some I believe, some brake work on another vehicle. So I think Lauren was being cautious, making sure that we had enough on that line item.
And we're all familiar with that deferred maintenance concept, and we talk about it on the board periodically because you can only defer so long, and it becomes unwise to start to defer any further. So that catches up here and there.
Yep.
I have.
Ethan, Kendall?
I just want to say good work, and you're never gonna hear a farmer complain about conservation. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I did have a couple questions.
Yes.
When you acquire a new park, does the percentage that the town pays go up or not?
It doesn't. That's a great question. So the percentage the towns pay, by the way, you did get a breakdown. So you've got that, do this sheet annually.
And that's my second question.
Yes.
I was trying to figure out
Yes.
just exactly how you came to the fee.
Okay, so we agree on a budget, and we agree, and the budget has a line item with income that comes from the town. So we take that number, and we do some simple math, which is what's actually not simple. In the end, it is. We take the equalized grand list for each town, and we figure out what the percentage, we take the total and we do the percentage for each. As one way to equalize across the towns. And then the second method we use is population. We do the same thing, and then we average those two. And that's what this sheet is all about. So it attempts to take the population and the relative, I won't say wealth of a town, because it's an inaccurate way to talk about equalized grand list, but it is our best method to try to equalize between the towns. If acreage was taken into account, Colchester would be paying the vast majority because they have the largest amount of acreage, but the amount of acres doesn't necessarily represent the amount of effort or cost it takes to maintain a park, if you follow. And every few years, we revisit this whole system to try to see how equitable we're being. And as far as we can tell, this may be the best we can do.
Okay. That then answers a lot of questions, because until you explained that you had 3 redos of the Woodside Park, I could see where the budget would be driven by other bigger parks, but not necessarily more maintenance. So my final question
Yes.
was, do you do any contracting for Essex? Have you done any contracting?
We haven't yet.
You haven't yet.
Have not yet. We've done it for Williston, South Burlington, Winooski, and the Winooski Natural Resources Conservation District.
And is your contracting primarily trails and maintenance and stuff like that, as opposed
Yeah.
to like mowing parks and things?
It's like Williston will call us and say, we've got 3 big trees down. Can you get a crew out to do it? And it's a simple contract. We charge basically the hourly cost plus FICA times 50%. That's it, and plus mileage. And so it's a good deal for the towns, good deal for us, because we get a little bit of profit off it. And in terms of building relationships, it's also really good because we can oftentimes respond quicker than towns are able to deploy their folks.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll take that as a budget question later.
Yep. Andy?
Yeah, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I just mostly wanted to comment to saying thank you for stepping in so strongly on the canoe launch opportunity there, and looking forward to see your continued participation in that, and looking forward to see also where it goes.
Yes, you got it.
Yeah, great.
All set? All right, we're all good. Thank you for
Thank you.
not only the presentation, but for the good work you do.
Thanks for your time and your support. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick.
Our next agenda item is presentation and discussion about municipal complex planning at 80 and 90 Upper Main. Hi, Catherine.
Good evening. So I am not logged into the meeting, but I'm thinking or hoping Maggie Connor is on there.
Hi, everybody. Chris Gender with
Oh.
Atlantic. I think I see a lot of familiar faces in the room. I'm going to be presenting the topic tonight. We're here to give the purpose of this is to give a quick update on where we're at with the municipal complex, what we've done, what we've learned, where we're headed, and just wanted to do a quick presentation on a slideshow, and then really just want to open it up to questions and start to hear where everybody's at. So if it's possible, can somebody grant me access to share my screen? Sweet. Thank you so much, Greg.
Now,
Let's see.
All right, we see your presentation.
All right, perfect. All right, what can you see? Can you see all my notes and everything, or can you actually see the full presentation?
Just the presentation. There is some closed captioning on.
Yeah, it's a default. Do you want me to leave? Would it be helpful to leave it on, or okay?
Nope, it just went away.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Well, first off, thanks everybody for having us here tonight. We're excited to give an update on the project and where we're at. A lot of people in this room have been involved through the process, so thanks to you for being involved and helping us make some of these really important decisions that we're making as we go through this. So tonight, the purpose is, like I alluded to earlier, is to give an update of where things are at and what we've been doing and what we're up to now. So as you know, back in June, we presented our project to the public, and at that point, it was a blank slate. It was a property, and we gathered a lot of good information from the public that allowed us to inject those ideas into 3 master plan concepts. And with those with all that information we got from the public, we developed those master plan concepts, started to think about some precedent images, and we met with the public on November 3rd or October 3rd to get some more input on, what their thoughts were on the concepts that we presented. And now we're at the stage where we're taking all that information that we learned from the public, that we learned from the stakeholder meetings, that we learned from the survey to develop a final master plan concept. And then in sequence with that, we're also developing a conceptual plan, which is a more detailed look. To this point, we've developed kind of a zoomed out version of the entire development. And now we're starting to zoom in and start to focus on the municipal complex. So the library, the town hall, and the fire station. And we're zooming in and we're starting to meet with those groups of people, the stakeholders involved in each one of those buildings, and starting to develop programs. So that way we can ultimately develop some really conceptual floor plans and then hopefully some 3D images. So like I mentioned, we had the planning session back in October. Or sorry, back in October, we had a master plan workshop, which included planning sessions with 5 stakeholder groups. And then that was followed by a master plan workshop. There was a variety. I'm not going to go into, just so you know, I'm not going to go into the details of everything we heard because I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. But if you do see anything in here that you want to bring up at the end, please let me know. But in general, we listed out, we came up with a list of challenges and concerns that we heard, and those are listed here during the planning sessions with the stakeholder groups. And those included like 1-hour meetings where we actually sat down with each group, rolled out the plans, and really started to discuss how things should be laid out. And we learned it was a pretty quick whirlwind 2-day exercise, but we came out of that with a lot of great info that helped advise what we presented to the public. And that was really helpful to get us to where we were. Once we met with the stakeholders, we were able to get into the public workshop where our planning team developed 3 concepts using the information they gathered from the stakeholder meetings. And we presented those to the public, and they provided a lot of great input. Here's just an example of some of the input we received. We had people take sticky notes and give us the information that they wanted to let us know. We took photos of that, and then we documented it and took all those comments and documented them and broke them down into certain, into these pros and cons for each item. I don't know how many people have had a chance to look into detail at the options, but and we'll get into those briefly in a second. But after the presentation, the public really preferred the option 3, but a lot of times we would hear like we liked a lot of things from option 1 that we wish could be applied to option 3. In general, people really like the open space, recreation fields, less dense housing was kind of one of the big themes that came out of the meeting. Here's a couple statistics about the survey. So we sent out a survey. If you haven't taken it, much into the details, a lot of different things that they liked about each alternative. The online survey, different from the public meeting, voted a lot for option 1. And generally we found that was because it showed a rec field and showed a good amount of green space. And the general consensus between a lot of these is that that was what people were really looking for, but there's a lot more in here. A lot more things that people had concerns or dislikes or likes for that. Like I said, I'm not going to go through every one, but we can obviously share this and people can look through these to get a sense for what people are looking for. Also on the online survey and at the meeting, people got a chance to kind of say which type of building building style they liked and appreciated, and we were able to kind of develop those, and our architects are going to use that to help develop the renderings to share with the public at our open house. A few more visual preference items that the survey presented that people really appreciated. A lot of different programs that people suggested that are going to bake into what I'm going to speak to in a second, and that's architectural programming. So before our public meeting, we had met with the variety of stakeholders to get input on what each building needs were. Our team of architects, we have subject matter experts is what we call them, in fire departments, libraries and town halls. And each one of them came to Vermont, and we toured each facility, met with staff at each facility, interviewed them, asked some questions, learned a lot about them. And then from there, we were able to develop a program to get an approximate size for development of the conceptual master plan. And now we're at the point where we're refining those programs to better define what the town's needs are. And we have started that process last week, and we're in the process of finalizing that this week, so we can really start to develop a program and some conceptual layouts for people to review and give us feedback on. I should also know, as part of this program, we've started developing pricing. And Gail, I don't know if Gail is here tonight, but Gail Anderson King is starting to do some economic projections and trying to understand what the tax implications are as far as what these buildings will cost. And we're also looking at several different other funding mechanisms. In a lot of our cost estimating is helping support the grants that may be out there to help this project move forward. So those are all in process, and those are all kind of helping decide those cost estimates are kind of helping advise the programming. So like I said, we've met with, more recently, we've met with folks at the fire department, town hall, and library. One thing that we're finding is sharing is caring. Everyone wants to share. We're really trying to be respectful of taxpayer dollars, and having redundant space has come up a lot of times in a lot of different situations. So having this town center really provides for an opportunity to share space and get it, more it's going to be used more often. So that was kind of one of our big takeaways from a lot of our meetings. So we're really working to make sure everything's connected and spaces are, maximizing their economical benefits. So that was one of the big takeaways there. And with that, we're getting into our next steps. One of the key things that we're shooting for is we have an open house at the town hall in the room that everyone is sitting in right now, where we'll be presenting the final master plan. So that's a further development of the concept master plans that we presented, the 3. It's going to be a combination of those based on a lot of decisions that are being made behind the scenes to help develop that. And we'll be reviewing those with stakeholders to make sure before they're presented at the open house that it's everything that people are looking for. And then alongside that, we're refining the program, like I mentioned, with the architects, using stakeholder input, and then we're going to develop floor plans, perspective drawings, and dial in the cost estimating to get a real understanding of how much all this is going to cost. So the next person engagement opportunity is going to be that Wednesday, December 11th at Town Hall, at the Essex Town Hall, where it's going to be an open house format where we'll have posters around the room showcasing Stantec staff, our architects, our planning staff, our engineering staff will all be there to answer questions, and we'll give a 5-minute spiel as people come in to understand what we're doing. So with that, that's the update I had, and I appreciate everyone's time and would love to open it up to any questions, concerns, anything that anyone may have.
Questions from the board?
What time is the open house?
5 to 8.
5 to 8.
Yeah, the idea is that people could come whenever. So there would be a presentation, like Chris said, like a 5-minute presentation held, periodically through that time frame. So when people walk in, they don't have to be there for the beginning or the end.
Looks like you're pondering a question.
No.
No? I'm not sure whether it was in the agenda packet, but I just wanted to ask the question around, for the town offices, it did say potential for a 3rd floor. Are you looking at more than 2 floors, thinking, decreased footprint, but also leveraging efficiencies that come with building up as opposed to out?
That is absolutely kind of an initiative of this project, is to maximize the space and be economical, and going to 3 stories does that. So something that we're one of those, it was in one of the slides as like a key item that we're considering.
Yeah,
I'd also add that this is our town center where we want more dense development, and so the thought of going up makes a lot of sense instead of sprawling. So
Right.
2 stories, definitely 3 stories actually makes a lot of sense right in the middle of our downtown.
Right. And it's also consistent with what's right across Route 15 as
It
well.
is, yep. And if you look at the ETC next plan, that is encouraged as well.
Okay.
I guess I do have a question. So one of the steps that we were making was the designation process. Where are we with that? Getting a state designation? Or-
Yeah, so the legislature really changed the process for designating to see the growth and get the benefits of a designation. And so they would support us in that. So we would get it at that point. But with all the work that we have to do to get a designation, it's going to take us at least a year to get that designation. So it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense to go for it now.
To pursue the current
Yeah.
regulation, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So I thought I just understood there was some interim regulations, but again, I guess it doesn't make sense to go in a direction and then have it changed
Yes.
by the time you
So-
get to the point where you.
So there is a little bit of an interim regulation that's in place. If you look on a map, it shows that we're in a potential exemption area for affordable housing. So there could be an exemption that we would get. It's sort of, it's not clear if we'd get it or not. It's sort of a debatable thing. So as long as our bus route stays,
Oh,
keep
right,
that.
right,
And that's a temporary thing until 2026.
okay.
I should note, it's a little aside from this, but I am working with the state in getting a village center designation for Essex Center right there at the library and Public Works, and really our historic center. That is a much easier process. It's something that I'm hoping that we can get from the state in January. So that is underway. I'm actually meeting with folks from the state on Thursday to walk around the center and try to figure out what our boundaries would be.
That some of the funding options might be linked to the designation question, though. So if it's at least a year away, does that still fit with our expected
Yeah,
timeline?
absolutely.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So did any of the, and I know that they're completely separate, but now that it's on my brain, I want to ask to make sure that we're looking at soup to nuts. As far as TIF districts, has anything changed with that process, or is that still the same?
I haven't heard of anything. There was a little murmur that the legislature might be looking at something this year and changing TIF districts, but I don't know if that's more related to the education fund, which is also something that people are talking about. So I haven't heard of anything for sure. You know, it is pretty hard to get a TIF district. Karen, you probably know a little bit about this from Colchester. But so it's one of our potential funding mechanisms for sure. It's not off the table.
Any other board questions? If not, I'll open up to public question, comment. Hubie, come on up.
The rain.
With other land. The town of Essex does own parcels of land in various parts of the town that might be utilized. I know the mitigation process is complicated and so on, and there are criteria and so on. But because those, I think they're like two little separate pieces up there, to me, that is kind of constraining the opportunity to fully utilize that upper piece where that's where most of the building is being proposed. So that's the question. Has that been examined, and what are the feasibilities of possibly utilizing those wetlands and mitigating them with other properties that the town has or may purchase? So, for example, the lower part of that, could some of the lower part that is now, I believe, not designated to be used for anything because it's so wet, but it's not all wet, could some of that be used as mitigation area, whatever? So just asking if it's could be examined. Might further optimize the use of that upper chunk. Because wetlands they're sacrosanct, but not completely, you know. You can move into wetlands as long as you provide appropriate mitigation. So, yeah, and it's feds, you know, so.
Opportunities for trails or, connections to those wetlands, but mitigation is something that we should certainly consider and talk about. I know recently, and maybe you may know more about this, but with some of our local, with the regulators in the area, it is very difficult you have to have a lot of proof that you've tried to avoid impacts to wetlands before you do anything. So that's really where we're at with wetlands and mitigating them on site. I hope that answers your question.
Lorraine, I see that your hand is up. Lorraine, go ahead.
Lorraine, you're off mute, but we can't hear you.
I see that you're muting and unmuting, but we still can't hear you. Goal. For how many we want surveyed? Is there a hoped for number of respondents that we want residents of the town to reach?
The only real goal in my head was at least what we got under our initial survey, which we're pretty far cry from. I think we were in the 190 range under our first survey. So I would love to try to get there, but obviously we're well short of that. But anything anyone can do to try to increase that to get to that level would be great.
We did just put another blast up on Facebook today, so hopefully that'll help a little bit. I did a front porch forum post last week.
Yeah. Has the town newsletter gone out this month? Or will that go out beginning of
December 1st.
Beginning of December.
1st.
For anyone who's listening here, the survey is on our website, so if any of you want to go to the project page, you can very easily take the survey from there.
And is that essexvt.org/upper main planning?
Yeah, I think you can even, if you just go to our front page, it's the banner on the top to click to it. So just Essex, the main Essex site.
Good reminder. Any other questions, comments from the public? Not seeing any. Board all set?
Debating whether I should ask it or not. I'm just curious if there was an option, if the town does not exercise their option that they have on the property, adjacent to the intersection. Remember we have that little piece? All these require using that piece.
I think there.
I was just curious.
I thought there was one option that didn't have that entrance, or maybe I'm.
I think it is shown on all three. We also show the mid-block connection as well. From our conversations with VTrans, they really would prefer us to start with that Billy Butler access as the main one because it's already signalized. Anything that we would do mid-block would not be signalized, at least in the beginning. So that is their preference.
That's VTrans preference, yeah.
Ethan?
I will just comment though that they did construction there for 4.5 months and they used that driveway mid span for 4.5 months and it didn't cause any problems. So
I'm all for using that mid-block.
I'm just wanted
spot.
to throw that out there that it was used thoroughly. I stayed quiet most of the time here.
You're good. You're good. This is where everybody can chime in and weigh in and express their thoughts. So thank you for that.
So I guess I will ask the question about some of the drawings showed additional land used more than we actually own for the fire station. What's the situation there?
Yeah, we've met with Deb Holland, who's the neighboring owner, and had some really positive conversations about how that can work for the development, how it and just looking at different alternatives with her and her engineer. So having some encouraging and constructive conversations about it. So that's there's that only one of the options actually showed that, just as a potential way to gain more space within there, but it's not a game changer by any means.
Okay, thank you.
The website shortly, so not tonight, but it should be up tomorrow.
Great. Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Maybe this will get, oh, I was going to say, maybe this will get a few more people to fill out the survey. In the fire impact fee presentation in our board, they're talking like 33 million for a fire station. So fill out those surveys.
Yep. Moving along to 6D, consider approval Susie Wilson Road scoping study recommendation. Come on down.
Good evening. I brought Mr. Ken Roby here. He's representing V-Trans tonight to discuss 3 projects within the Susie Wilson corridor. All 3 are in scoping, and we'd like to move the projects forward and get them out of scoping. As you all are well aware, back 2010, 2011, V-Trans in the state of Vermont decided not to continue construction on the circumferential highway. In an effort to mitigate some of these traffic impacts throughout Williston, Colchester, and Essex, they came up with some offset projects to look at and analyze intersections and travelways throughout the communities. And these 3 projects within the Susie Wilson corridor came up, and they're under design, and they want to move them forward in scoping. So I'm going to stop talking and let Mr. Roby give you his presentation.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully,
Well,
Greg
PowerPoint?
has
Yep.
it. Yes, please. I'm going to apologize for my voice in advance. When I was here Thursday night, I was on the very beginning of a cold, and now I'm on the tail end of it. So, fighting the voice. But okay, is that page 1? Page 2. Okay, close enough. Thank you. All right. So, as Aaron said, the project itself is this came out of the Sense Colchester Essex Network Transportation Study that was done that looked at this area and broke the Susie Wilson corridor down into 3 project areas: the intersection with Route 15, the intersection with Kellogg Road, and then the corridor in between the 2. So in tonight's meeting, I just want to quickly go over the project history, how we got to where we are now. It's relatively long, much longer than it was ever intended to be. Just being a scoping project. It's not really a scoping study, it's a scoping project, so it's the next phase after a scoping study to then better define the project for V-Trans to decide how to move things forward with. There's been a handful of reports and studies done. We're going to talk quickly about what the action items are in front of the select board tonight in the future, and then I'll go over the three areas of the corridor and the questions about alternatives. So again, quick history. As Aaron noted, 2010, 2011, circumferential highway was officially canceled. The CIRC alternative projects were created in the various affected towns and municipalities that were supposed to benefit by the CIRC. To deal with, or to better flesh the town, because there is a small part of village property there at the intersection of Route 15. And at the time, there was co-town managers, if I remember, if that's the right term for it, but the village and the town were speaking with a similar voice, and they asked for a further review of the Susie Wilson Route 15 intersection. So that resulted in yet a 3rd report that came after that. Next slide, please. So again, we had the Sense study. We have WSP's conceptual design that was done in November 2019. And then we have 2 analysis memos from VHB, one focusing on the Vermont 15 intersection, and then a second one that is both Kellogg Road and the Vermont 15 intersection, done in 2024. So the actions for the select board to consider are confirming support for the Vermont 15 intersection and the Susie Wilson Road corridor designs. And I say confirming just because these have only been minor adjustments to the original recommendations that had the town support from the start. So that we didn't have to do much or change much with those. So it's just confirming that is still the direction you'd like to go. And then the third is to actually select a preferred alternative for the Kellogg Road intersection. And I'll explain as we move forward why there's the difference in those two. So looking first at the Vermont 15 intersection, these next couple of slides are the alternatives that were considered in the Sense report, but were dismissed, but just to show what was looked at very quickly. Next slide. So one was a beefed up version of the intersection, really just eliminating the U-turn off the slip lane, off from 15, and adding another left turn from Susie Wilson Road onto Route 15. And it also included kind of an island U-turn before you got to Lowe's. Wasn't popular, didn't cut the mustard, so that one was eliminated. Next slide. This was a drastic change from what's out there today, which was the concept of the through route being Route 15 to Susie Wilson Road over to the Cirque Highway. It had some support, but the impacts were just too vast, especially with the development that has taken place there on the corner today. So just the impacts to that took that one off the table. And so we got to the preferred alternative, which is a scaled down version, actually, of the intersection that's out there today. It eliminates the slip lane coming westbound from Essex Junction, eliminates the U-turn there at the intersection from the slip lane, adds a left turn lane from Susie Wilson Road onto 15 eastbound. So that was the preferred alternative, and at that time, that's what VTrans had planned to analyze and better define it and move it forward through the scoping study. Recently, I'd say 2 years ago now, that was put back to the town and the city. The city did not support a second left turn onto Route 15 eastbound because it doesn't mesh well with what their vision of that corridor is from Susie Wilson Road back towards Five Corners. So they wanted us to take a look again at that intersection to see if the dual lefts from Susie Wilson to Route 15 were truly necessary. And that came with the mindset of we're post-COVID, we know traffic volumes have changed and our traffic data was old. So let's refresh it, look at it again and see if it's really needed. Next slide. And one more. Thanks. So that's what we did. We again took a fresh look of this is the intersection with dual lefts off from Susie Wilson Road. The next slide looks very similar, it just has a single left off from Susie Wilson Road. And then this next slide shows the analysis results. So what it did prove, and this is 2037 design year, if you look at the light 3 columns in the middle of level of service, that grades, if you're familiar with the traffic analysis, level of service kind of works like a report card. A is really good, F is really bad, B, C, D, and E. We have an E, which is different than grading, but is everything in between. So if we did absolutely nothing to the intersection in 2037, you'd see that the intersection would have a D average, and you'd have one failing movement, which was the westbound right turn from Susie Wilson Road. But overall, it's a functioning intersection, but it's not a well-functioning intersection. If we went with the preferred alternative with the dual lefts off from Susie Wilson Road onto Route 15, see it improves to a C, and a C is the goal for VTrans projects. So when you're doing either a new intersection or a revised intersection, the goal is to hit a level of service C. So anything C or better is good. You'll see as you go down the list, each of those areas improved in their operation. And then the next column is the lane reduction. So that's strictly a single left turn lane. It scores as a D overall, but it eliminates the F. It eliminates that failing movement in through there. So it is an improvement over the no build, but it does not do as well as the dual lefts. From VTrans perspective, a D is acceptable for a congested intersection that you're making improvements to as opposed to a new intersection. So either of these strip feet for the southbound right turn lane, so that's on Susie Wilson Road approaching Route 15, you back up 500 to 550 feet with each cycle. The center of the intersection with Lowe's is 500 feet. So with those, all with the no build and with the single left turn lane, you queue back into the Lowe's intersection, which is a common problem now in that PM peak, and one of the things we were trying to solve with this intersection. So even though the single left turn lane does satisfy the level of service, you still have that queuing issue and kind of somewhat gridlock issue with the queuing back into Lowe's. So that's why we would continue to recommend the dual left turns off from Susie Wilson Road eastbound into Essex Junction. Okay. That's the end of the presentation for that intersection. If you have any questions for that.
Why the island?
Pardon me?
Why the island or the bump in the?
Why the island? In the preferred alternative?
Yeah.
Just to separate traffic in that, and it's a small island with this alternative. Being as wide as it is and as many lanes in that area, we'd be looking at six lanes across there. Without something physical, it's really tough to tell where you are, especially when you're making that left turn from.
I'm just envisioning tractor trailers, their trailer going over your bump.
They shouldn't.
Even though they should be in the farther lane, chances are they may not be.
Yeah, you're
just seeing.
Yep, your turning radiuses at that intersection are quite large, so you should be adequate. But that is a detail to look at in the actual design process to make sure the turning radii is adequate.
Ethan?
I was just thinking of what Don was just saying. I was just wondering, it would be similar to the curb or the hump that's currently on 15?
In the median 15 eastbound?
Yeah, well, if you're sitting at the stoplight trying to turn back onto Susie Wilson from the...
Yes, it would be similar to that. Yep, so your slope, usually it's slope edging with a concrete island in through
So
there.
the other side is like grass and trees.
And much wider, yes, yep. No, it'd be a narrow island in that area. Just wide enough for signs in the middle to wait for the next cycle. It's not desirable, but it's there if you really need it.
Scary, yeah.
Yes.
So you're saying that the crosswalk is actually shorter across the 6 lanes than it is today across?
Right, because you don't have that extra stretch of the
slip
slip
lane
lane
there. Okay.
to go across.
All right, then the other thing is, I recall back in the day, this intersection used to have 2 left turns, then it got switched to 2 right turns, and now we're making it 2 of each.
Correct.
And it just seems like we just keep tweaking this intersection. Has this been? Did we just choose wrong before, or why is it have to be modified a third time here?
Right. A lot of it has to do with the resulting development or the development that comes after. So with that signalized intersection at Lowe's, as that increases in use, then your volumes change and your queue length, need for queue length changes.
Okay.
If you had moved that intersection with Lowe's back up to the northern intersection, then either option would work. But
Okay.
it's just that proximity of intersections.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ethan.
One more question on the original double left. There was a crosswalk from
North to south?
Yeah.
Yes,
Is that still part of the plan?
it is.
It's just
Yep.
not on that.
It's just
drawing.
not on this, and thank you for that's a good
Yeah,
reminder.
well, it's a
for
good.
me
It's a
because-
good. It's an added benefit that's not
Absolutely.
existing.
Yep. And just as a point, so what I'm going to show you both for this one and for the Kellogg Road, these are traffic analysis schematics. So these haven't gone through the full design phase of figuring out what should the turn radii be and all the other bits and pieces. They were done strictly to give us a platform to do the traffic analysis on. So they're not a done deal as far as what it looks like. But yes, the intent would be to do connect the path from Susie Wilson Road over to Route 15, have a crosswalk.
Your big trucks have enough swing there
They-
without hitting that?
Right. It would be designed so that they will have. Yes.
Be
Okay.
able to stay in one lane.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think.
It's
don't
only
think they
it's
will be
only,
able
it's
to.
only one lane turn right. And that's gonna be no right on red, right?
It might, I don't know that
Well,
for
you're gonna
sure.
have a green left-hand turn, so.
Right, it depends on what the
Yeah.
phasing works out to, but
I don't know.
it'd be a tough
Just-
place to be right on red.
But if you turn right off that a single lane right-hand turn,
Yeah.
you have 2 lanes to turn into, no other obstructing traffic.
Right.
Oh, right.
You know what I
You
mean?
wouldn't-
You're
you
gonna
wouldn't
have
be
you're gonna
concurrent
have
with
2
any other
lanes.
I don't know, a lot of people turn right there.
Well, yeah, but you'll only go one at a time. There's only one lane to turn right. There's no arrows in this other.
Okay.
I like the
Alright.
original. If you look at the original version, the old picture, versus
That one.
yeah.
Yeah, there's your straight right.
And
It's just in color.
and there is enough real estate there currently with that slip lane.
I know.
It's true.
Okay.
You mentioned a U-turn. Do you actually have many cars that do a U-turn there?
Very few. So we in the recent analysis of the or recent recounts of the traffic in this area, it's a small number. It was 6 to 8 in the counting period in through there. So you'd see almost nothing during the peak time because there's no opportunity. So the only really time you can make a U-turn with that weird slip lane is when there's nobody on Susie Wilson Road.
Yeah.
So that's why, at least from our standpoint, yes, there's a need for a U-turn because there is no way for anybody along the north side of Route 15 to head back towards the village. But there are other options, other existing options, whether you come up Susie Wilson Road and make a U-turn when you're on Susie Wilson, or just go up another block and make the U-turn at 40th and Allen. So there are options there.
I'm good.
Just, it looked like you were forming.
Just thinking about the next one.
Okay. Do we want to take public comment on each?
Excuse me.
Yeah, come on up.
So I guess two. Oh, sure. Sorry.
Identify yourself.
You could. My name's Jeff Bakiaki. I'm a resident here in Essex. Live really close to Susie Wilson Road, so I know this intersection pretty well. I do see the U-turn every once in a while. Somebody makes it, not usually during rush hour, but yeah. Okay, so 2 questions I have. One was about the right turn on red for Susie Wilson Road onto Vermont 15. So if you're coming down Susie Wilson, you want to take a right. Apparently that's posted no turn on red today. You could pretty clearly see down the road if you're a driver. I'm curious if that was considered as being permitted as part of this alternative, and if so, would that change the balance of traffic capacity that you would need to add a 4th lane on that leg? Like if you could add a little capacity to the right turning lane by letting them go right on red, do you need all 4 lanes still? I guess that's just my question. Was that considered in the analysis?
I would have to ask the firm that did the analysis, but my belief is the prohibition of right turn on red is because of the dual rights, and you don't have adequate. If you have 2 lanes trying to turn right on red, you don't have adequate sight distance to make sure it's safe to turn right.
Okay.
Aaron, if you want to.
Yeah, and
Just
those-
come up to the mic so we can.
those signs were put up there as a recommendation by one of our former police chiefs, and it was a safety issue, a safety concern. So that's why we had those. I mean, I think there's 3 signs out there total
There's 3
that
of them,
they
yeah.
just put up at that intersection. It's more of a safety issue.
Thank you. And then my second question, I guess, just to throw it out there, because there's a lot of history here. I know it seems like this has been hashed many times with the board. Was an alternative intersection idea like a roundabout considered for this alternative? They can be higher capacity, and there seems like there's a lot of space out there. Was that ever looked at?
It was looked at in the Sense report, so in that original Colchester Essex Network Transportation Study, a roundabout was looked at here,
Okay.
but it didn't pass muster either from operational or again from impact, footprint impact potentially.
Footprint impact? Okay.
My guess, again, from an operational standpoint, because it is such a one-directional majority flow from 15, depending on the time of day, that quite often when you have unbalanced legs like that for a roundabout, they don't perform as well. That's a
Yeah, I guess I'd be
suspicion on my side.
curious to see what was considered for that alternative.
Yep.
You know, they work really well for off-peak travel, and I think anybody who drives this corridor knows that you get stuck sitting at the light here outside of rush hour, and it's pretty frustrating when you're trying to commute and you're just sitting there waiting for a traffic light that was designed for the peak hour and the peak hour only. So,
Yep, no, understood.
I'd be curious to see, I guess, what that alternative looked like for size and capacity.
Yep. So I'd point you to the Sense, go there first. If you don't
Okay.
find an answer, give me a holler and I'll see what I can find.
Thank you.
Yep.
Talked about it on the board and for safety, it's been mentioned, is anywheres with the speed limit. I think we had, I might have to ask Aaron, but I think it's like 40 miles an hour pretty much is an unsafe without a severe distance to be able to see. I think the conversation I'm reminding myself of now is right up here at the Jewels on the Green, the right-hand turn there, because the curve and the speed limit's only 35 there, but it's still significant. But I was thinking of it when you said that about the two right hands going right, and I'm like, it's always the left-hand lane that messes it up, though. Because the lights are green and you're sitting there waiting for everybody on the outside lane to go by before you can go around the car, and you're towing a trailer, and it's even worse.
I agree with that take. That's often what happens. So that right turn movement almost operates with one lane, so everybody goes through that pinpoint.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay. So next segment are the Susie Wilson Road corridor improvements. This was on the list, more to look at the bike and pedestrian connectivity between the two intersections. So there is sidewalk on both sides of Susie Wilson Road there now. There might be a couple of gaps, remind me if there is, but it's there today. But there's virtually no shoulder in that along this entire corridor. So this piece of it was just to look at how can we maximize the existing right-of-way to get full sidewalks on either side of Susie Wilson Road and 4-foot shoulders on either side, while also carrying 5 lanes of traffic up Susie Wilson Road with 2 lanes in each direction and then a center lane for left turns depending on your direction. So there really weren't any alternatives looked at here. It was just how can we maximize the space and get the best that we can, optimize the space available to get those bike and ped accommodations. This is a quick plan view of what those look like. In most cases, the sidewalk is right up against the curb along the roadside. In some areas, you'll be able to get some separation between the sidewalk and the street, but you're very much controlled by what is the development along the way, along that corridor.
So are the yellow parts the sidewalks?
The yellow is the sidewalk. Yep, the green is the curb and the extra widening areas, so it's a very narrow band.
So sidewalks would all be moved out from where they currently are?
Or they're right on the new roadway themselves. So in some places, they stay exactly where they are today.
Okay.
In other places, they can move as much as 6 feet or so.
Okay.
Because it's not an equal widening on both sides of the road. It varies as you go up through. So that one was, we did go through an exercise to see if we could get even wider, potentially, shoulders and such, but once you do, you get into some substantial impacts to the adjoining properties.
And some of the businesses and the commercial businesses that front that section and within that corridor, there would be some significant takes of property, parking. There's Susan's place has that concrete retaining wall. Our current sidewalk is right up against that retaining wall and right on the curb, so it's almost near impossible to push back. And that was built I believe that retaining wall was built to get grade to allow under building parking in that area. So we're kind of married to that section and where that curb and pedestrian infrastructure is located currently. So.
Your questions from the board? Questions or input from the public on just the Susie Wilson corridor? Okay, we're good to go on to the next.
Okay, Kellogg Road intersection. Next slide, please. So this is the preferred alternative that came out of the Sense report. Generally, it adds a left turn lane off from Kellogg Road to head northbound on Susie Wilson Road. Adds a left turn lane on northbound Susie Wilson to turn left onto Kellogg Road. And has dual through lanes in both directions, north and south, and a right turn lane southbound to turn onto Kellogg Road. It's a lot of extra lanes heading in a lot of different directions, in the hopes that that would improve the efficiency of the intersection. To do this, you would have to widen Kellogg Road to the west and maintain 2 lanes there for some distance before they could taper back to a single lane. There were 2 options in the report, one that dropped it down right by, I'm going to blank on it again.
Gothier Morris.
Thank you. Gothier, Morris intersection, and then the other option takes it all the way down to New England Drive past the Keurig plant. So that was significant improvements there and lots of weaving and mixing between those intersections and other uses through that corridor. Similarly, you'd have to extend 2 lanes on Susie Wilson Road northbound as you head towards Route 2A, and then those would taper down to a single lane and folks would merge as you get a little ways away from the intersection. So the goal is just to try to get people through the intersection as quickly as possible and then get them back onto a single lane once you get out. When we got into the deeper analysis on this, we found that even with all of these improvements, the operation did not improve significantly. So some improvement, but not enough to justify the amount of change and the amount of expense that would have to be done to this intersection. And that's primarily, 1, because it's high traffic, 2, there's a lot of turning traffic, and 3, it's just a very elongated intersection, so you have a lot of clearance time for vehicles to get through there that ends up being wasted time as opposed to a tighter intersection. So we said, let's look at some other potential alternatives that were not looked at in Sense to see, can we get any other improvement of the intersection without significant impacts. And the way to do that generally is how we handle Blair Road. So Blair Road, as you probably know, is a very low volume connection in through here. Kellogg Road, we're about the double left from Susie Wilson onto Kellogg. So again, back to that idea of we've been through COVID, our traffic volumes have changed. It's been a while since we did the analysis. We said, let's take a look at this again with just a single left turn lane from Susie Wilson onto Kellogg. But it confirmed the outcome of even the preferred alternative, that it helps, but it doesn't help enough to justify the cost of the improvement. So alternative 2, we looked at, what if we took Blair Road out of the intersection altogether? So it's removed from the intersection. It's not signal controlled, and it's restricted in its movements. So you could only turn right from Susie Wilson onto Blair, and you can only turn right from Blair onto Susie Wilson northbound. You could no longer go straight across to Kellogg, and you could no longer turn left onto Susie Wilson Road. It has a lot of benefits as far as the intersection is concerned. It's the best performing operationally from a traffic level of service standpoint, and it's also best from a safety standpoint because it significantly reduces your number of conflict points because it eliminates those left turns at Blair Road. So for the strict purpose of making the intersection work better, it's a successful alternative. However, the major con for this alternative is that it limits what all the residents in those neighborhoods that connect by Blair does access there, so they would have commercial traffic that would go in and out of this neighborhood. The next alternative, similar concept, but it maintains full access of Blair Road, but it does it in a different way. So it's called a cluster intersection, in that the southbound southbound traffic approaching from the north. My brain has that cold too, but approaching from the north, you'd actually have a 2-stage intersection where the connection from Blair Road would be made in between the two stop bars. So they wouldn't have their own phase necessarily. They would join the phase of the southbound Susie Wilson Road traffic. So they would be signalized. They would be able to make all movements, but they do it in two steps. So instead of going directly to Kellogg Road or directly to south on Susie Wilson Road, they would go out and join the queue with that southbound leg. So this one does, it is an improvement over the previous preferred alternative as far as level of service goes, but it reintroduces those additional left turns, both from Susie Wilson onto Blair and from Blair onto Susie Wilson Road. Another benefit, though, is you get a tighter intersection at Kellogg Road, so it improves your ability to get your pedestrian accommodations to something that's more manageable than that much wider intersection was previously. The next option is making it a true four-way intersection by realigning Blair Road so that it's directly across from Kellogg Road. This would require a full take, obviously, of that property that would be on the southeast corner of the intersection. But it would bring it in. It would keep the intersection very tight and manageable. However, which was a surprise to me, the analysis shows that this operates worse than the other new alternatives. So, full functionality, nice tight intersection, but it just doesn't operate as well. So, and again, that's because Blair Road being low volume, has its own full phase, whereas the other one was a shared phase. So those are the four that we looked at, and the results, failing legs during the peak hours at various places of the intersection. Alternatives 2 and 3. If you go back to the AM peak for a minute, thank you. Alternatives 2 and 3 function at a level service C overall, and alternative 4 level service D, and those are in the order that we looked at them. And again, as you can see the blanks as you go down the table, that's because those are movements that are no longer part of the intersection. So that's the cause of the operational benefit in through there. So if you want true operational improvements at the intersection, alternative 2 and alternative 3 are where you'd want to look. The others really don't give you don't give you much bang for the buck for what you would be expending to improve this intersection. The study's recommendation would be alternative 2, just because that's the best operational alternative, and it's got the highest level of safety improvement at the intersection. And that's what we have for this intersection.
Discussion.
Can you go back to alternate 2, what the recommended one is? That one there, okay.
I got a question.
Yeah.
How come they don't run the 2 lanes north with the amount of shoulder that's left on that road? Why don't they run that 2 lanes all the way to the CERT?
It could be done. Yep.
That's like a no-brainer in my
Yep.
thought process, because that's like your number one jam up right there is all the people who pretend like they're turning left and then cut you off when you're doing the speed limit.
Right.
So if you had 2 lanes there that carried all the way up,
All the way
to
up
the
through.
circ, it just feels like that whole stretch of road would just be empty.
Would open up. Yep.
Yeah.
And this would address that to a point, because this does go far enough up that then you,
But then it bottleneck down 500 feet before it goes back
when you
to
get
2
to the
lanes.
intersection, yep. But it would flow, because once you're moving, there's nothing in your way.
It's like once you get up at the CERT.
Right. Yep.
I hate the 2 lanes on the bypass there, because people drive crazy fast on that road, and if you try to drive the speed limit, you got people on your bumper trying to give you a push. And I think with and I guess it would be safer if it was 2 lanes all the way to the circ from that perspective, because all the crazy people could go past you if you want to drive. If you try to drive 40 miles an hour,
Crazy.
Right.
And
It does encourage speed.
in one of the in the discussions that we've had about the women's prison, which they're talking about putting an intersection on that part of the road to go there, there was some comments about the fact that this is a very high accident stretch of road already. Is that considered in whether or not you want to put 2 lanes in because of all those, everybody that thinks, well, I'm on the highway now, I can go 50 or 60.
Yeah, except your accidents or crashes are at the intersections.
Yeah.
So there's not so much in the throughway. It's,
Okay.
it's on either end.
It's in that portion of the corridor between Route 15 and this intersection here, and they die off quite a bit as they go.
Okay, so it's not it's not where, okay, I guess I misunderstood the comments that were made in the other discussions. I thought it was on that stretch where,
Bypass
where
you're
it
talking
currently, yeah, on the bypass where it's currently 2 lanes, but okay, it's the intersections before that.
Either
Okay,
either end
gotcha,
of them.
Gotcha,
Yep.
gotcha.
And Ken and I talked about that briefly as well after the last meeting we had. It's you get off the circ, you're traveling, you get off 2A, and you're traveling, you take your right onto the bypass, and you still have that circumferential 50 miles an hour, 55
Yeah.
plus mentality, and people just cruise down the bypass, and they get up to this intersection where the speed is decreased dramatically, and
Right,
bad behaviors.
right.
Right.
That's why I'm not crazy about the 2 lanes, but I don't know if it's better to have 2 or just 1. But,
I think
yeah.
if you have 2 designated lanes where there's, those shoulders are huge.
Yeah.
I've had people pass me on the shoulder before.
True.
Right.
Where if you have 2 clearly identified lanes and you have 2 lanes of traffic with cars in them, that in and of itself can be a traffic calming measure where, people don't see just a wide open space to the right and they get antsy. So it could have the opposite effect,
Oh,
or at least allow room for people to go by safely if they do choose to drive over the speed limit.
Right.
but that's not the intersection, so.
Right. Yep.
So, coming off Susie Wilson onto Kellogg, will there be right on red or no right on red at that point? The way you've got that set up.
I would believe there
Because
you
now you've got a sidewalk
likely
in there.
would.
Hmm?
I said, I think you likely would have right on red there, Susie Wilson southbound, because your only conflicting traffic is
Requirements of that property
for acquiring a property on the
on the southeast.
southeast. We have not.
Okay.
No.
I just didn't know.
Yep. Nope, we haven't. So both of the properties, we haven't got into it for this discussion, but with all of these options, there's access issues, primarily on the west side, both for the Colonial Mart on the corner and for the shop on the opposite side, because with the additional lane widths, you really don't have that full ability to go left and right into those drives that are very close to the intersection. So all of these options would have property impacts in one way or another, whether it's actual takes or loss of access.
Kendall?
So that one would require all the residents, they would have to go right. They would not be allowed to go left.
Correct.
Uh,
Yeah. And to do that, we would likely put a raised island in the area where you see yellow, so that it's very clearly you cannot go
I
left.
don't think that's going to be very popular.
Yeah,
I
I was gonna say,
agree
understanding
100%.
that is a low traffic did you look at being able to take a left onto Susie Wilson from there without I'm just thinking if somebody can safely make a left and onto Susie Wilson, I don't know what risk that introduces.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very challenging spot now. Even signalized, it's a challenging spot with lefts. The site, whether you're making a left from Susie Wilson onto Blair or from Blair onto Susie Wilson, just with the number of lanes and with the curvature of the road, it's tough to see at times what's coming the other way.
It reminds me of the 15128 Towers Road, because the only way to safely operate Towers Road is to have its own phase. When you add a phase, it lowers your statistics.
Right.
Which is why, in my mind, when they clumped it up together, that's why I asked about the property acquirance was, I'm not a traffic engineer, but another phase would allow left and right hand turn and be the safest alternative, but
It doesn't give you the overall performance.
or
You lose some
property
volume.
that you don't have maybe ability to acquire.
Right. And that's kind of what we went into with the mindset of if that four-way really performed superbly, then it may be worth talking with the property owner, see if it's even an option. But where it was significantly lower than the other less footprint impact
I sit on
options.
Towers Road many times. I know.
Yep.
What a waiting signal.
Or trying to turn left
Well,
off
that's
of 15.
the way I always
Yeah.
go home. Is
Yeah.
Towers to 128, and
Right.
that's the only left-hand turn is
Oh,
a problem in an intersection.
Yep.
Because it's only one direction of travel unless you have something directly across from it, and then you can get 2 lanes. out of
Right.
it.
If you can, you're
But if
both
you have
making
a
lefts
single
in
lane
opposite
where the
directions.
ability is to go straight, right, or left, there's nothing you can do.
Right.
And that would be the same.
Yep.
You wouldn't be able to go straight, but you technically go straight to go left.
right. And that's what it is today. It has its own phase, and you pick where you want to go. Yep.
Yield on green.
With this, have we looked at the downstream impacts of traffic within the neighborhood being, like,
Out of this intersection.
Yeah, I know, I used to live on Damon Drive, and I would always go to Pinecrest just because that intersection was, it's a bear to begin with.
Yep.
Other questions from the board? Kendall?
There's no option on an alternate 4 to keep the road that comes into a T and then just have a loop in. You'd still have to acquire a little bit of property, but it would be out much closer to Susie Wilson Road. An alternate 4.
So I'm trying to picture how that would
So
be
you've got the
different than
road
what it
coming
is
in and
today.
going across the house. I'd just leave that road right to a T and then have a short loop come in, like a dog leg. You'd still have to acquire a little bit of property and stuff there, but ultimately that would be the best option in the future. You'd straighten out that intersection and make it safe for everybody.
But I think operationally, that would be the same as what's there today, right?
Yeah.
It'd be offset, so it's not in direct line with
Yeah,
Kellogg
but
Road.
you could move it.
You can
so
move it
was
some, but
yeah, you could
Right.
move it some. So,
Yep.
Just a thought.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think you'd gain operationally in that sense, similar to this side. So this would be the optimum 4-way, and any way you stray from this, the operation gets worse in that sense.
Thank you.
Andy?
So, Greg, sorry if you can go back to the option 2 there. You are getting rid of a slip lane there for the right turn off of Kellogg onto Susie Wilson, right? There's a
Yes.
right
Yeah, the
turn
island,
there.
the island would go away, the slip lane goes
One
away.
of the options talked about eliminating people taking a left turn out of that parking lot onto Kellogg Road, but that's not considered here. That's still going to be allowed in this intersection.
So that's one of the access issues that I was referring to. So that the Colonial Mart that's there on the
Yeah,
corner,
yeah.
for all of these options, left turns out of there likely would be prohibited, just because there's too many lanes
Okay.
of traffic.
Okay,
that
so
have
this
to
this
go.
one doesn't have an island preventing, because I think one of the options, they could hit an island there. There's no island in this one.
Right,
To
in
prevent
this
that.
one you
There's just going to
likely
be a
would have
sign that says no left turn.
Right, or
Yeah.
you'd have to change the access in such a way that it would be very obviously just right in, right out.
Okay, because that's crazy when people are trying to.
Yes. Yep. With
Well,
the slip lane, they have a little bit of opportunity there today because you can
yeah.
kind of get into the slip lane.
Some, but there's just too much going on there.
Right.
Yeah,
between the
yeah,
slip
yeah.
lane and the lane going towards the intersection.
Right.
Right.
But I think too, the earlier point, I also think it depends on what time of day.
True.
Right.
Because if it's early in the morning, it's easily done. If it's late in the day, it's easily done.
Yep.
So I think having that option and, allowing folks, like if there's no traffic, yeah, I'll take that option. Some may, even if it's not ideal conditions.
Right.
Some will.
But, right, yeah.
Yep.
I think of Maple Fields up here. Right. There's no left-hand turn to turn into the end to the driveway, but there is to the roadway. The signalized roadway. But a quick question I had in my mind: is VTrans still doing the fiberglass post? I've seen them in certain parts of the state and not in others.
The
For-
flexible
Yeah, for lane
delineators.
divider, it was a thing for a little bit, and then I think
Yeah,
people were just running them over.
right. They do
Yeah,
it,
that's not an option.
Right.
We don't want those in the road.
Yeah.
especially not in winter time.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know, but I saw them at one point, and then they kind of dwindled away, and I
I know V-Trans use them
understood why.
on occasion. They kind of use them as a training, during that training period to try to change people's habits. But none of them can't exist through the winter, which is the issue.
Any other board questions or comments? None, I'm gonna turn it over to public comment. Come on forward.
All right, this is the one I came here for.
Okay,
I live in the neighborhood serviced by Blair Road.
Blair Road, yep.
I come in from the old Susie Wilson Road usually. So the dual left turns that happened today are, like everybody's taking a left, so everybody just kind of drives at each other and slowly goes left. If you go through, you're the weird one, and you got to be careful about that. That's definitely like a oddity and a difficulty, but it functions. Really think the restricting access to the neighborhood just to deal with a peak hour performance issue is really not a nice thing for the people who live in that neighborhood. I feel like that's, again, designing for, a parking lot for Black Friday kind of philosophy, like designing the most extreme throughput we can provide for a twice a day occurrence when the rest of the day people are going to have access to their house cut off. I guess myself included. So full disclosure, this is like my way of coming in and out of home, but just seems like we're looking at the numbers of level of service as like the metric to decide what is the best alternative for the community. And that's like not paying attention to other ways that people access the neighborhood. And then the second part of that, that concerns me here is the pedestrian access. So we haven't talked at all about how those alternatives deal with pedestrians through the intersection. I'm sure there's discussion in the reports about it, but I think that's an important thing to consider. There's a lot of businesses on the bypass in Susie Wilson Road and a lot of people walking around that neighborhood who probably see this road as a barrier. So like an alternative that considers better pedestrian access across Susie Wilson, I think is very important. That's a really dicey move right now as you're trying to cross that street with all the many left turns trying to make their move.
Right.
And then I'll ask my same question as before. Was a roundabout considered for this alternative?
Yes. Yep. So again, it's in the sense report as well. There was actually a series of roundabouts on Susie Wilson Road looked at as part of that review.
And it was dismissed.
Correct.
Why was it dismissed? Do you know?
I'd have to dive deeper.
Okay. Because we did talk about an alternative with major like land takings, like so I guess I feel like that should be part of the equation too, if that's going to be considered by the board. Like a roundabout would function all times of day, require no traffic signals, would slow down traffic as they approach the intersection coming off the circ, driving really fast, and they have really good throughput. So I guess I think if that's going to be
very much in the forefront of looking at the options of this intersection and trying to tighten the intersection up so you have much shorter crossings and you have the ability to have crossing on different legs than you have today, that is looking at that was considered in these designs. And to the point of the cons for the intersection, it was not the study's first approach to go to look at restricting access. We tried all the traditional things. The traditional things were not getting results for the intersection itself. So that, again, it's definitely an acknowledged disadvantage of that alternative. But if the goal is the operation of the intersection and the safety of the intersection, this was the only feasible way we could see real measurable change. And as Aaron noted in the memo to you, I believe, for this meeting, the no build is also an option. So if none of these options resonate or don't provide the benefits without counterbalancing with negatives, a no build option is an alternative.
So remind me, we don't have anybody from the public waiting to speak, do we? Okay. When was the sense reports done?
2014,
okay.
I believe.
So understanding that we're 10 years past that, is there the opportunity to kind of do the same workup with a roundabout?
I think we'll have to go back and look at it, but I think you'll have the same you'll have the same issues as far as traffic goes, traffic operation side of things. So the traffic has not gone down from what was predicted at that point, but the operation sides have tweaked a little bit depending on directions of travel in through there, so it's not drastic. And my guess, and again, this is just guessing, I'd have to go back, we might be in that area where a single lane roundabout does not have the capacity to handle the throughput at the peak hour. And unfortunately, that's the one negative of roundabouts, is when they fail, and you don't have, you can't change the timing side of it. They work fantastic when they're within their capacity, but once they do fail, they get over capacity, there's no way to change it. So we'd have to go back and look at the sense and see if that was the situation there.
Last call for public comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board.
Well, the ultimate. Oh, never mind.
So there was previously a preferred alternative. It was 2019. What's changed since then? Is it just the new traffic counts of?
Yep, so if you want to go back to it, so that was the preferred alternative that came out of the sense report. So it's saying what's changed as far as,
Why look at a different alternative than this one?
because this one, when we got into the more in-depth analysis, traffic analysis, we showed that it just does not provide much improvement.
Okay, then how about the modified? The next one is the modified preferred alternative.
So that eliminates the left turn lane, so even with the change in even with the reduction in the projected traffic, which, to the point earlier, that it makes it very difficult for pedestrians, and it also makes it difficult, operationally, just because of the clearance time for every leg of movement.
Right.
So unfortunately, with this intersection, there's no easy answer.
It's not a good answer.
Yeah.
Never really easy.
I was just gonna comment and say that I think that we should do nothing with it because restricting the access and in the presented, if we can go back to the preferred, I should call it, two there. Yeah. Oop. Yep, that one. Yeah. Can you go back to the original 2019? Sorry, I'm just trying to look at that. Yeah, so disadvantage there is east to west pedestrian crossing. Is that eliminated in option 2? Can you go back to alternative 2? It's not drawn there.
It's not drawn there, but it has the capability of being there. You'd have to push that southerly stop bar back just a little bit, but not significantly.
And that was thought of.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And all of these options can be tweaked. Of course, the more you add in, you're going to lose some operational function. But.
Now, did they ever think to signalize Blair Road in this drawing? Cut the island back to 20 feet or 30 feet, whatever you want to call it, the width of the road there, and have that signal with the left-hand turn off from Susie Wilson. When your left-hand turn off Susie Wilson, you were green light on Blair Road.
Left turn on Susie, green light on Blair.
Or Kellogg. Left off from, you're turning left off Susie to Kellogg. Left turn green.
Yep.
You would have green light on
It is now.
Blair.
Susie.
So that's generally how it would work for alternative 3. So that's
Great.
that. It's using that cluster intersection that allows the Blair Road activities to move while the other non-conflicting options go.
And there's no property. This is within the boundaries of the road that's currently still there.
Correct.
And you still gain all the lanes that you wanted to gain.
Yes.
So the only downfall of this was a little bit of traffic time.
Correct. Yep. It's a little less. It's a little less operationally, and it reintroduces the left turn, so it also takes away from your safety benefits.
But a signalized left turn,
Correct.
which
Yep.
it currently is.
Yes.
But you wouldn't have traffic coming against you in potential straight manner.
Correct.
So then, upping the safety factor under this
Right.
design.
So if everybody follows the rules,
Right.
it would work. It would work well.
I'm just trying to play it all out in my head. I don't turn off from Blair Road other than 3 times a year when I actually wash my truck. But
I did myself for about 30 years, so I'm very familiar with it. But yeah.
So how do the two stop lines work on this on the southbound?
I was just thinking the same.
Yeah. So if you're headed southbound, you would on that first stop bar, you'd get a red, and the one in front of you would continue to be green.
Oh, to empty it
And
out.
while that's
Okay.
green, it would allow Blair to then empty out, and then that would.
Okay, because I was wondering if
Yep.
they both turned red simultaneously, then it would fill up and you couldn't turn
Right.
left anyway. So
Yep.
you're letting it drain out.
You're letting that short piece drain out so that then Blair in its phase can fill it up.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's where you lose the efficiency is, again, you make it that long intersection by pushing that other stop bar way back.
But if Blair is timed like Towers Road is, nobody's at the light doesn't signal.
Correct. That's the case for all legs.
Always.
Yep.
I don't know traffic lights.
They're all-
I just know
everything's-
Towers Road. I
yep.
sat that way many times.
Yep, everything's fully
I
actual.
can tell you
fully
exactly. I know
actuated.
when it's going to turn green.
Yes.
How many
Yep.
seconds? But my question is, that was considered in the endurance study there, that when Blair is not active with traffic, you know, we said it was very, very low traffic. That double the tree there, the double stand of southbound traffic,
Mhm.
that wouldn't just stay green, other than alternating.
It would
off
if
from
nobody
Kellogg?
it would if nobody comes to Blair,
Right.
but you have to assume even one vehicle per phase is gonna trigger it. So you
And
have
that's
to
and
assume
that's
that
what
somebody.
that's what the traffic report was.
Correct.
One vehicle every white phase.
You'll have to look and see what the turning movements are during the peak hour. I'm saying it's less than
At peak
10.
hour though.
Peak hour. Yep.
So
During-
that's what's that 4 to 5,
It
5:30.
gets wider and wider. Our peak hours in Chittenden County are now kind of peak 3 hours. Unfortunately, they flattened out.
3
But
to 6.
yeah, it's your morning.
At that intersection, so there's more than just the peak hour at that intersection that I have concerns with.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time with this right here,
Understandably.
just because there's just too much going on in each column. And
Yep.
Well, this alternative 3 has ease in it, right? Alternative 2 does not.
Right.
alternative 2 has a lot less traffic pattern.
Right.
Yeah.
One has
Restrictive of
one is less restrictive and lower operation, and more restrictive and better operation.
But as Ken informed us at the beginning of this whole process of this scoping project, it was to look at the functionality of the Susie Wilson corridor, these intersections, and moving vehicles efficiently through these intersections. There were going to be negative impacts either way on whatever preferred alternative, build or no build of the preferred alternative.
So there's a 50-50 recommendation here, either 2 or don't do anything.
Right now, our preferred alternative for Susie is to proceed with the 2 lanes, with the preferred alternative. We'd like to move forward with the proposed cross-section for Susie Wilson between Route 15 and Kellogg Road. But I did leave that option open. There's always the no-build option for Kellogg Road. If the board feels that is not something they want to take on at this point, or the positives don't outweigh the negatives, then you have that ability to move forward with a no-build alternative for Kellogg Road.
So if we were to decide to move forward with the no build, and I'm just throwing out a potential here, for only the Kellogg Road intersection, does that effectively remove it from the entire project? Like, we couldn't add it in like 2 or 3 months' time after gathering more information, or when would that cutoff be?
So when you make your decision is not hard and fast. So if you want or need to take more time to make that decision, now is the time. But once you make that selection, then it moves into the next phase of the process, which is hard to turn back out of. Yep.
And does it have to be a package deal, or do they have to make a decision on all three, or could they choose? to move ahead
Unfortunately,
with
in
two?
order to get out of the scoping project, we have to get resolution on all three pieces. And V-Trans is bumping up against the federal timeline on closing out this scoping project.
Taking forever.
It's been extended at least 3 times now to give us more time to get to a solution that everybody likes. So at some point, V-Trans is going to have to act, one way or another, just to get out of the process.
So, if you do 2 of the 3, if we choose to do a no build on the Kellogg Road intersection, it just takes it off the plate and we can't
Correct.
come back to it.
Yep.
But the question I have is, do we get the 2 lanes? Because after thinking about my comment there about crazy drivers, I like the fact that people won't have to line up on 15, depending on which lane they want to be in when they get to the Kellogg Road intersection. Will we get 2 lanes going through there?
Start another project, we can do another study, look at different options on how to address the lane issue that you're speaking of, but also to look at maybe taking some of the ideas that we did get through the Sense and these other design options that V-Trans had provided us, and look at other alternatives for us. Maybe we do go back and look at the roundabout again at this point. That's an option. But, it would be on the town's dime, and or if we applied for funding through V-Trans for a grant.
And so these 3 projects they're funded by Circ Alternative
Right.
money? So doing a no build option, or saying no build there, and then later looking at it, it becomes our full
Yes.
cost potentially, or our normal cost,
Or the normal 80-20 split that we.
however we would do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. And so I thought that Kellogg Road intersection was actually at a different phase than we are on the other 2, because I thought it's
It is in that we weren't just doing further study on the preferred alternative, and this one we were actually proposing
A new
different
alternative.
alternatives that did not come out of the Sense report.
okay. So the recommendation is that we ask for either a preferred alternative for all 3. Okay.
So, understanding that, we've kind of been in this analysis paralysis for a while. And I think we would all like to move forward in some way, shape, or form on this. Do you have a date by which a decision would need to be made in order to encumber the appropriate funds to move forward? I'm just thinking about if the board does want to go back to the Sense and look at, the potential for a roundabout at Kellogg, or just take another peek and wait for a full decision until that happens. Like, how much runway are we looking at there?
I would have to go back to V-Trans management to get that answer. I know the goal was to try to complete this scoping project by the end of this calendar year. But we've been in paralysis by analysis for a long time, and I can continue to look at it and may or may not get any further. So it's
We
get to a
probably
point
won't
where
have
funding's-
any more information by December 16th.
Right.
No.
Probably not, Ethan.
So can I ask you a question? Is V-Trans dead set on alternative 2, or would
No.
they accept alternative 3?
Nope. So that was our technical recommendation. For that, it's the town's choice as far as what the preferred alternative. All of these are, I shouldn't say all of them. 2 and 3 are seen as valid from an operational standpoint.
Okay.
They provide operational benefit, they provide safety benefit. The others,
My computer just died here a minute ago, but there's only 2 lower grades for turn operations, and there's 2 extra turn abilities. One extra turn ability, which is a westbound left. But if you look at it, it's DD, AA, you have the B, and then you have tied at C, you have an A on the southwest right, and then you go back up to the top. Overall is your C and C. The only downfall is the eastbound left and a westbound right.
Kellogg Road, eastbound left and eastbound right actually are worse off and the alternative 2 as opposed to 4. So it seems to.
Yeah. The only true improvement is the westbound right off from Blair Road. But it's single operation.
yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to think if I lived there, how I would feel about it. I know how Jeff feels.
Numbers aside, I think all 3 is a better option than the rest.
Alternative 3?
Especially because if you don't have anybody turning off Blair Road, you're just gonna have
3.
basically an open same thing. So
Right. I'm trying to think of in my head, like, where does this work? And the only place I can think of is the exit ramp off from Winooski Bridge. When you're getting on the interstate, there's a progressive stoplight there underneath the Winooski Bridge.
Going the other way,
Yeah,
right?
if you're going onto the on-ramp, multiple lanes of traffic there, you have a double light, and then you have a double light coming off from, you actually have like a triple-ish light there.
Yeah, coming off through there. Yeah.
And I was thinking, because I'm like, I don't know anywhere else. I probably drive through it all the time, but if there's another one like that, I don't know where it is,
Yeah,
other than what they did down at the bottom of I was thinking of the hollow there in Colchester, but I think that's just single light.
That is single. Yeah.
So I'm
I
trying to
can't think of any place in Chittenden County. The only one that comes to mind that I'm aware of, similar to this with a low volume entrance, is it's actually in Lindenville on Route 5 and Red Village Road. There's a railroad track right in the middle, but there's a development just off the side, a shopping center and such, that has this situation. But I can't think of anything locally that is similar to this.
I worked for the railroad a lot, so I think of Route 7, Rutland.
But
The nightmare down there.
that's along the same line as it is right up here in Essex Way. Because a lot of times if somebody's coming out of Essex Way, the light will change, let them go, and the light ahead will stay green, and it empties out the bridge. And then when they stop, you get back onto the bridge. So it's been a number of times I've been stopped at one light or the other one. So I still think 3 is the best option.
That alternative will function. It's a viable solution to it. It's just a matter of which one performed better for the corridor as a whole, and that happened to be alternative 2.
Right.
Well, I think, losing a little bit during your peak hours, but gaining a whole lot for the residents and everything all the rest of the time is pretty significant.
And on the off chance that there's not a ton of traffic on Blair Road, like, I'm not in that area. I can't speak to yes or no, but that effect of the whole corridor is based solely on Blair Road stopping traffic.
Amazing, isn't it?
No, I mean, I get it. I get
Yeah,
it all. I'm
yeah.
just like, I'm trying to think in my head, like, if I sat in a lawn chair all day, how many times would Jeff go to the parts store, you know?
Yep.
I don't know. I'm not even familiar with how many houses are back there, to be honest with you.
It's a sizable area.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's probably the frequency is there, but the number's not. So it may get triggered often, but you only have 1, maybe 2 vehicles
Quick light.
in the queue waiting in that sense, but it triggers the whole phase.
So we need some
What is-
motion.
Thank you, Don.
My computer died. I don't have the memo. Okay. I make the motion that the select board reaffirm the preferred alternative for the Susie Wilson Road and BT Route 15 intersection, and that the select board change the preferred alternative for the Susie Wilson Road and Kellogg Road intersection to alternative 3 cluster.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carries 5-0.
Excellent.
You have your
All right.
blessing to go
Marching
forward.
orders.
Have our direction. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for putting up with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a complicated thing.
Yeah, yeah.
You did well.
Moving along to business item E, consider approval of charter amendment articles for submission to the town clerk.
I haven't got there yet. Wait. I'm still on the traffic stuff. Come on.
Yep, so basically this is just bringing back to the board language that we've already discussed. And this would be what goes forward to the 2 public hearings, December 16th and I think early January.
I think you're right. I think it's the 6th.
Early
My
January.
question is, before we approve these, both the Energy Committee wants to be a commission and Trails and Conservation wants to be a committee. Would that have to be a charter change or just an actual article on the ballot?
Based on statute, there's 2 ways that can happen. If it's allowable via the charter, the select board could vote to make that happen, or it could be on the ballot, or the only other way to do it, I should say, is to put it on the ballot and the municipality votes to form the Conservation Commission.
'Cause I'm just not sure if it's in the,
Does not need to be in the charter if you have a vote to
so we could just put it as
establish
a
it.
separate article on,
a
okay.
separate question. Yeah, do you
I
want to
just
form
didn't want to
a?
vote.
I think,
Okay.
have we
Yeah.
already passed the, or can we still add to public hearing on December 16th if that's what people wish to do? 'Cause I think at our last meeting, we had to approve them so they could come back tonight, so we could approve them to go to the
Public hearing.
public hearing on the 16th.
So I don't know. I don't think we need to have 2 public hearings for everything that's going to be on our warrant on our meeting, do we? Our town meeting.
No, it's the charter
It's the
changes.
charter.
Have the really long process with
Yeah,
multiple
yeah.
public hearings?
That's what I was thinking in my head when I was, because I was like, anybody can bring forth I mean, to get the signed voters, but you could bring forth an article for the town ballot up until 30 days.
Yeah, the end of January.
I think it's 30 days.
All right, I just want to make sure that, okay.
That was my best understanding of it always.
Then I make the motion to select board consider approval of final versions of the Town of Essex Charter Amendment articles for official filing with the town clerk.
Second.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Ethan. Is that what you need?
Consider approval or
Does
approve?
the select board approve?
I was just reading just a
Oh,
minute.
right. Yep. So say that.
It says consider approval.
Yeah, I would take out the consider.
All right, so I make the, sorry.
Sorry.
I make the motion that the select board approve for the final versions of the Town of Essex Charter Amendment articles for official filing with the town clerk.
Thank you. Thank you. Check E off the list. Next up is our discussion about 2025 town meeting preparation.
Right, so we try to do this every year. Believe it or not, it's November, but we are looking ahead to March and town meeting, and so just trying to plan ahead. I think the idea at this point is to have something similar to last year, having an informational town meeting the night before, so the Monday night. Combining that with the town showcase. Last year we brought in soup, which I think was pretty popular and pretty tasty in my opinion. So just trying to look ahead and figure out, do you want to do something similar this year? Use the middle school. We do have the middle school reserved already, just in case. So this is the chance to start to think about what you like from last year and what you might want to see differently if there's anything.
Andy?
So the memo says catered soup service.
Right.
Does that include cleanup afterwards?
That
No.
was, yeah, definitely.
Last year it did not.
Right. So you said yes?
I said last year it did not. And this, I don't believe it includes catering this year, but, or sorry, I don't believe catering includes cleanup this year, but that might be a decision factor. If that's something you're interested in.
I would advise it include cleaning up, because the town, you guys should have been cleaning up, the caterers should clean up, so. I would look into somebody that can cater and clean.
I'm gonna throw an alternative to that. If more of us would have stayed and helped, we would have been better off. Because I stayed and picked up.
No, you did.
But I also am, I think that last year the soup was that was a donation of how it was cooked. It wasn't a paid for soup, right? It was.
No, we bought the
paid
soup.
for
It
it.
was the high school students, I think it was the Honor Society, but the high school students who helped
Served
out
it.
with serving it. Maybe it was local
we had
government,
to
student
buy
government.
stuff.
But
But we had to pay somebody to make the soup?
Yeah.
yes,
Or we just paid for the soup?
yes.
No, we paid somebody to make it and bring it over.
And
Then the
Did we talk
students-
with the school? I'm just asking. I don't know. But did we talk with the culinary program over at the school to see if they were interested in making us the soup?
We have talked to them about that. They did not have the capacity the past couple of years. They used to, when we had it at the high school, they used to
did it
do
for
the
dinner. Spaghetti.
spaghetti dinner. I think it might have been a COVID thing where they phased out and or don't have the capacity to it anymore. We can certainly ask again, but they have not been available when we've asked the past couple of years. And we've asked other school districts around too, just in case there's good cost-effective options.
What,
Yeah. I'm just thinking out loud here that change your mind. But I just feel like there's a lot of community involvement, especially in our town, that if we reached out a little bit, we could pull this together and not have it fall on town staff or even us. But
But it sounds like you're interested in the food.
yeah, I think
yeah,
the soup
okay,
was a
okay.
very
Yeah,
good
yeah,
idea.
Yep. So yes, with that in mind, then yeah, we can.
I like the soup. I thought that was
Ethan is
good.
not sold on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask the question about, I know there were quite a lot of leftovers.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Was just gonna ask whether 150 people was if it was a high estimate, or if we learned from last year about capacity and amount.
150 might have been a little high, but I think we did get over 100 people there.
96.
Was that-
96?
I went back and looked today to see.
The problem is 36 don't eat soup. Yeah. I don't know how many people eat soup, but
So we're sold on food,
yeah.
not
Okay.
sold on.
I'm not sold on catering. I'm just. I'm not saying to commit to spending money. I'm just saying that the idea is there. Let's see if we can. I'm gonna hit the turf with my boots and go talk to some people because I know a lot of people who would.
Done.
I don't want to interrupt. You all set?
Go ahead.
Okay. So we are not mailing ballots. Have we just confirmed that?
No, you've
We
not
have not
confirmed
made
that.
Yeah,
That'll-
that's one thing. And the other thing is that yes, those round tables are wonderful, but for some older people that were handicapped, they could not sit at those tables, and so I would recommend getting the fold-up chairs down on the floor, not up where we had them, because people up there couldn't hear, unless we've improved our sound system and our.
I was gonna mention that.
Because that was the other thing, was the people being able to see and hear. So
Good point.
I like the idea of the showcase. I think that went well. I think people were, people that came learned a lot. So, but
I heard very positive feedback from last
Yep.
year.
Yeah. The scouts with the flag on her, and then the singing. It was
went well.
pretty cool.
Kendall, what are your thoughts?
I thought it went very well. I was just thinking if there was any opportunity for additional surveys or anything. I know the departments had a lot of information and stuff.
Surveys ahead of time.
Did we do exit polling? I thought we did.
The next day, town meeting day, we put out a link that we had up for maybe a week or so to just get feedback from people on how they voted, why they voted certain ways.
We have done it at town meeting before, and we got close to 100 responses the first year. The next year we got like 3.
Oh.
So it dwindled pretty quickly. We handed them out and then ended up picking them up off the auditorium floor. 'Cause they,
Kind of like it's like the popcorn at town meeting. Yeah.
Well, in thinking about saving trees, saving paper, saving the staff time to compile all of those surveys, I'm curious about if we do have surveys that we want to have available, the potential for having a tablet there of some sort where people can just go vote immediately, boom, it's all tallied. We don't need to follow up with staff time to do that tallying effort. And it's quick, it's easy. Just an idea.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
could
know if
have
we
that on a desk. I mean,
Yeah,
Maybe like 3 questions instead of
Yeah.
5 or.
yeah. I mean,
Did
gosh,
you-
I've got a
Did you
couple
approve
older
the budget? Did you
iPads at
approve the
home that I'd
budget?
be willing to wipe and just bring them in for that purpose. Anyhow,
I like the idea of the middle school. Also, I think though anybody have a location issue? No.
any other ideas, what you would change? Do you have the feedback you need?
I think so. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I did have
Yeah,
an
you can
idea
go ahead.
when I was thinking about it. Just and you said that, but what about us being on the stage instead of the floor, and maybe people could hear us better if you had speakers up. You know how it was kind of behind us. There was like
Yeah.
a DJ behind us, up on, and then the speaker was directly behind us too.
Yeah, I mean, personal preference, I kind of like being
I did too.
on
Yeah.
the floor. But if there are any audio visual improvements that we could make to increase the audio.
Was that was the audio a donated thing last year?
I think it was the school system.
I think it was the school systems. I want to say that they were planning on having a better system installed after town meeting or sometime this year. Town Meeting TV was also involved with hooking stuff up because they were live streaming, I believe. But yeah, I think we definitely got some feedback about how to improve the audio. So,
Well, I'm not sure they've
something to keep in
upgraded it
mind.
because when we did the new building thing where people, they could not hear the lady talking with the mic.
Oh.
That was a complaint.
Okay, we'll have to look into it.
so did we do it as a hybrid meeting or?
Yeah.
We did because there was no, since we no longer have floor voting, we were able to do a hybrid meeting
Right.
and allow input.
Okay. So that's the thing that we got to make sure that not only are we able to be heard in the room, we could be heard online,
Mhm.
and that there's a way for people online to speak to the room. I think that, I don't remember, I thought we had an issue with hearing people who were online speaking.
Yes, they couldn't get to us.
And so it's not just, there's multiple aspects to who can hear, yeah.
Ethan?
So when COVID happened, I'm trying to remember, right? When COVID happened, there was a legislative change that made it for the hybrid meetings, right? But did that make town meeting mandatory?
Any public meeting.
Well, during COVID, they allowed people to delay their town meetings. And then there was the option of either doing it fully remote or, no, you couldn't do it fully remote because of the, I think that was the year that that was the first year we did the vote on the ballot. And I think it was because you couldn't do a town meeting.
Yeah, I don't think the state ever allowed voice
Yeah.
vote
No.
electronically.
No.
They allowed towns to put everything onto the ballot that may not have always been on the ballot. And then the hybrid stuff that came out of COVID was more just about your general select board meetings, planning commission meetings, stuff like that. But there was never, to my knowledge, has never been a hybrid town meeting vote, and just logistically, how could you count?
Votes for the number of people.
Except in Brattleboro, where they have representative
representative, yeah.
town meeting, they can do that remotely.
Yeah.
But that's the only one. But no, yeah, you can't
Well, I
do.
was
a
just
floor vote.
wondering in the case of thinking in that direction, or if let's just say we had somebody like Kate off to the side with a computer, and in our minds it was, we were doing town meeting in person, but if somebody had a question, it could be raised by somebody in person, and rather than us having a screen behind us,
Yeah.
and then you guys trying to find hands in here, and then them hear us.
Yeah,
Where
I-
where you would be able to directly have their question brought to the floor, and then a direct response where it's more of a recording instead of a hybrid meeting.
Yeah, and I think one really simple way around that is folks online could put their comments or their questions in the chat, and then someone on site could read them and attribute them to the person asking or making the comment, in case we do run into audio issues for folks online. So yeah, I think we can get
It's all
creative.
good stuff
and-
to think about.
Yep. Plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Yeah. And know that you're gonna land somewhere in between.
Yeah. Yep, with any luck. All right, all set with town meeting?
Yep,
Okay.
as long as Greg is.
I have what I need. Thank
Okay.
you.
Some things you don't need to.
No, it's all useful.
Moving along to G, work session on fiscal year 2026 budget. Good evening, Dan.
Hello, how are you all doing?
So kind of, if I can kick this off, just briefly, sort of the way we wrapped up, pretty quick turnaround from last Thursday. Dan did provide some numbers that I'll let him run through in a moment, or certainly if you have any questions. But at this point, kind of just looking for overall budget goals, reactions, anything that jumped out at you that absolutely should not be in the budget, that's absolutely missing.
The things that have changed from the original budget book that you were presented with for last Thursday. Some of the changes are pretty minor, like just revising a VLCT estimate for their dues listed number 1 for a reduction of $43. The Historical Society has requested $650 more than they have in previous years. I made a choice to eliminate a capital funds transfer in the IT department. There's an updated number for the Winooski Valley Park District fees. That estimate's gone up at $928. We made a correction on the Essex Rescue estimate for fiscal year 26, causing an increase of $195. We updated the number for the repairs and maintenance in the PW garage complex in the buildings department to increase that $18,196. We made an adjustment to our anticipated Howard Center expense within professional services and community outreach for the police department. Obviously, that's offset by some of the shared services agreement with the city. So there's a netting of two numbers there. And then with all the 7 changes above listed there, we had to increase our Health and Human Services grant to represent 1% of our updated budget number. So that budget update number is $17,098,497 at this point, but obviously we're still deep in the process here of moving those numbers around.
Ready? Can we ask you questions, or you want to wait? But they're asking for $2,467 more.
Well, I'm saying an increase of 928, but this.
What am I not looking at right?
So it's not an increase of that much. We guessed what their increase was going to be, and we guessed low, and they asked for more than we thought they were going to ask for.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, so the $40,010 was our initial estimate of what we thought fiscal year 26 could land. I'm not familiar with the $2,000 number that
Oh,
you're
so,
presenting.
well, that's the difference between what they asked for last year and what
And
they're
this
asking
year,
for
okay.
this year.
So
So I got lost here, and, okay.
as long as the 40,938 number is what they're asking for this year, then we are in the same place.
And is that the same thing with Essex Rescue? We guessed at it?
Essex Rescue, I made an error in the population number, so I was using the wrong multiplier based on the per capita rate that they presented there.
Because I looked at 2025, they wanted $213,284, correct? Well, I'm hoping I'm doing this right. Maybe I'm not, but. And then their request for 2026 is $224,823. And that's a lot more than.
So I'm showing that number. That in the original presentation is 224,823. And I shorted our population by 20 people, so I was $195 short.
So we're adding that to that request? Is that what you're saying?
Their request was $19 and I forget how many
65 cents maybe, something
per
like
capita.
that.
When we were putting the budget together, we grabbed a population number that I think we used a 10,900 population. There's a whole bunch of different population numbers out there. We realized that we should be using the census from 2020. That's what Essex Rescue uses. The population number there is 11,504. So their per capita amount didn't change. What changed was that we had underestimated or under projected the population of Essex. So that's what drives the number up a little bit higher.
So you're actually adding the 928 to whatever we had last Thursday. Is that what you're telling? Is that what that says to me?
For Essex Rescue, yes. Yep.
That's for Winooski Valley, the 928 edition.
I mean, all right. Well, 195 for Essex. Either way, it's
Yeah.
like wait. Okay. Okay, I'll save my rest for after.
What was the 18,000 and change for the garage complex?
So we actually had a zero line item during that buildings presentation. We discovered it early last week, so we didn't have time to change it for the presentation, obviously. So it was a line item that had maybe $16,000 or $17,000 of expense in fiscal 24.
Yep.
So it was an oversight to not have a number in there. So that 18,000 is representing about a 3.5% increase. Yeah.
And I did write that down in the spreadsheet.
Yeah,
on Thursday.
I think Aaron had addressed it in his opening remarks when he was beside John.
That's what I was gonna ask, because I thought you told us that 18,000 was already figured into budget day. You gave us a new number that day.
No, that 18 was not in the not in the tax rate that was presented that day.
Not in the one that was on paper, but you gave us verbally.
I might have given you a verbal number to
Okay.
represent that increase, yes,
Okay.
but not on paper.
So
I
it's
think
not
you
like
said it was the
It wasn't
18,000.
reflected in all
Yeah,
of the
in this.
numbers,
Yeah.
Yep.
But you were aware of it before.
Yeah, we became aware of
We
it.
all wrote. I wrote it down too. I got it written down.
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, early
Like, I
last
read
week.
that and I was like, I thought we knew about that. But
Yeah, early last week we became aware of it. Didn't have time, obviously, to adjust
Yeah.
in the paperwork.
We
Yeah.
we knew of a lot of this stuff going into the budget day, and I think I mentioned that we had a few changes. We tried to call them out. We didn't want to provide you more sheets of paper. We just kind of wanted to do, okay, here's what we had that you originally received for budget day. We'll make some adjustments. We'll
Yeah.
provide you an update for December 2nd. So we'll kind of keep it moving one chunk at a time versus trickling.
Oh,
To keep the heat in.
Thanks.
thank
Yeah.
you for that.
It was to keep the
It
heat
was a
in.
little loud before, too, when people were leaving, so I closed it slightly.
And out of curiosity, what was the 4,000 capital transfer for IT?
So the 4,000 is kind of a historical amount for IT for their capital transfer.
Okay.
But kind of collaborating with Rob and looking at his expenses and what's in that line item already for capital transfers, I decided it was a possibility to eradicate that.
Okay.
Since we're kind of working our way down the list a little bit, that community outreach number that is up to 88,000, that's based on what we are aware of from them. I think those conversations are ongoing. yeah, Howard Center Community Outreach has to figure out how to spread that across the affected municipalities.
Unfortunately, sorry, I'm gonna,
The Department of Corrections stopped funding, and now it's going to be the Department of Attorney General.
That's the CJC.
This is CJC.
CJC.
That's
There's-
different?
Yep. There's a lot of
This
state.
is the mental
functions.
health workers that go out on the
Yeah.
calls.
No.
I was gonna say that seems to kind of be the theme of pushing things back on the
remember
municipalities. and-
You did. You did good.
Don Sweat.
I'll go out on a limb and
I'm sorry.
also say that that's very unfortunate. Yeah, 160,000 was pulled from the Howard Center by the state, shared by 5 communities. Any other questions?
Say that again.
comments?
160 was pulled.
There was $160,000 in funding pulled from the state
Okay.
that would have gone to the Howard Center, that needed to be reallocated by 5 communities to cover that cost. Which is where the 88,000 came from.
Yeah, so we're rising from about 30,000 from about 58,000 to 88,000 is our share of that.
Wow. And no additional services.
They would
We have-
provide, this is all very early,
get
and I am hopeful that we can bring that number a little bit further down. What they proposed to us is that it would come with a greater presence. Part of the reason ours is high is because we are such a high user, and so in some ways it's frustrating to feel like we're using them and we're taking advantage of this resource, and now we have to pay more for it. Right now, a lot of the Howard Center outreach team, they're all over the county, so they kind of have to have a home base. It sounds like often use South Burlington as a home base. It's sort of central, but because we are a high user, they're talking about if this sticks, and even if it doesn't stick, perhaps that they would have more people kind of embedded in Essex, or at least located here, so they can more quickly respond within Essex.
So there may be a silver lining.
And the city pays a portion of it.
And it is a great service.
Mm-hmm.
Does the Howard Center get a human services grant typically?
Not for this. I can't remember if they received one for some of their other services.
For their other work, that's, yes. It's everything except what they do with the police department.
They do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not seeing the professional services category.
So if you're in the book, it's page 65 is the
65?
detail. Yeah,
'Cause
that's
it says
the costing center
operating.
with notes.
It says police operating.
Yep. Yeah, so on 65, there is, it's the costing center with notes.
With notes.
Yep, so it's just you'll see it in a different format.
Oh, okay, 330. 330. The proposed was 83,109. It needs to be 88.
We originally projected 58,250, and the latest from Howard Center is that it's going to be 88,000.
So I guess my question is going to be, do you know what the total is for that line 330? I can change it on my chart.
Increased by 29,750. So it'll be about 112,859, I think.
112,859.
Yeah.
I just wanted to put it on my chart because the costing center is great, but total number is the only thing that matters. Okay.
Don, any other comments, questions?
Not on what he said yet.
Okay.
I have other questions on the rest of the budget, but not the.
Okay. I guess I can cycle back and speak to the debt items that we didn't get to on Thursday. The only item that's in the fiscal 26 budget is the police facility. So there's the $345,000 of principal there and the related interest for there. Going back to the 2025 budget, there was a couple of line items for a lease of a police vehicle. This has actually been moved so it's solely within the police operating budget rather than in this debt area. It's something that we uncovered during the audit that we'd actually placed it in two spots in the fiscal 25 budget. So we're eliminating it here. So it's only within, it's only the police building that's within this budget.
Bless you. Okay.
And if there's not any questions on that, I can move to the revenue piece as well.
Dan, you have a very soft voice.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just moving on to the revenue part here. Obviously, there's the property tax element. That's the largest piece. I have...
Page 12.
Sorry, yes.
There's the word general in front of it.
General revenue, yes. So very much near the front of your book. We did discuss the interest income piece a little bit. It's budgeted for $350,000 in fiscal year 26, which represents a little bit of a reduction in principal amounts that we could be investing at that time in the range of 11 to 12 million, and also anticipated reductions in interest rates given our current declining environment in that area. Those rates are about 3.25% to 4% in these estimates here. Obviously, we have interest income that gets shared with our water sewer fund and our capital projects fund, along with the general fund, as the three biggest areas in this budget. Another large area here is the use of fund balance. We're presenting this as $250,000 in fiscal year 26. As you know, with the current year, we're using $325,000. So that's certainly a piece on the table that can be manipulated as we kind of decide where we want to land with our tax rate and our tax levy. Other areas. So I know the pilot revenue has kind of come up as a question. The $12,800 number that is there is based on a state document that we have from June 24, representing our fiscal year 25 anticipated amount being that exact same amount, $12,800. So we're just duplicating that in this line item here for fiscal 26, assuming that same number. For state,
and so does the state just decide what that number is?
The state does just kind of decide what that number is. It's shared across all municipalities. I don't know if the ratio has somehow changed. I haven't dived into that type of broader allocation, but we do have that information point, which I decided to use for budgeting forward at fiscal year 26. Yeah. Another point is the state Act 60 revenue. We budget in the $4,500 range for fiscal year 26. Our actual numbers actually reflect our reappraisal number being included in this amount. So really for budget purposes, it probably shouldn't be presented here as revenue within that budget because our reappraisal activity is also not within this budget as well. So all this activity for the reappraisal that we've gone through for the past year, which I mentioned on Thursday was about $280,000, that really gets recorded in the assessing budget, but I do back it out here for the presentation because it's drawing on restricted funds that we've gathered over the years, and it's not truly a fiscal year 26 line item, budget line item. because we're not using tax money for it. We're using funds provided by the state for that. So that's the reason for the discrepancy that you see in the Excel file here between budget and actual. It probably could use a little clarification in terms of separating the two and maybe eliminating one for future budget presentations.
Okay.
Another piece is the state's Act 68 revenue, currently budgeted at $50,000. I did receive a document in September. That was our preliminary cash flow for fiscal year 25, which indicated that this number could be $62,000 for fiscal 25. In fiscal 24 is about $55,000. So there is maybe some potential here to increase this revenue line item. But, you know, we still want to be kind of conservative with things and make sure we're able to count on true dollar amounts that are coming in. Those are some of the biggest items. Obviously, I've done a little bit of reductions in the penalty and interest in terms of our property tax collections, basing that, you know, a little bit on a little better collection history year over year. So just trying to pinpoint and soften those estimates a little bit so that we're not negatively surprised in gathering revenue for this budget.
So, in regards to that one, we have several houses up for tax sale. What happens to that money?
So they are continuing to accrue interest. So, you know, the penalty is a one-time thing, if you will. And there's the 1% assessment each month for those outstanding bills.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the question was
What happens when you sell the house?
when a tax sale happens.
Yeah.
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 Where does that funding go?
So the tax sale is going to encompass the principal and the interest on a property, along with the attached legal fees that are attached to a specific home. So all of those items will be collectible. And, you know, right now we are recording revenue on a 1% basis each month, but it just lands in an account receivable right now. So we're not going to be adding any revenue on a tax sale. All of that revenue is posted here. All of that interest revenue is already posted as we go on a monthly basis. We're not going to gain any more interest when we conduct a tax sale transaction because we're already billing these clients along the way.
Okay.
Once we actually collect the money, it will go into the general fund, right?
Yeah, when we collect the money. Yes. Yeah, it'll end up in the general fund.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Sorry. I thought the question was more like how the interest.
No, I knew how that works.
Okay.
I'm going, wait a minute. If the guy owes 50,000, you sell it for, 100,000. Yeah, okay. I got it.
We don't keep the whole 100,000.
No, I know. It
No,
goes
no.
to the
Keep
fees
the
and all
50,
that.
And then it goes to any other lost pays on the property and all that good stuff.
I'm sorry, I kind of got lost on that question.
So, the town of Essex fires a tax sale. The property's worth 300,000. They owe the town 100,000, but there's a lost payee on the property, a mortgage, for 150,000. Does the town disperse all of, or does you hire a legal team to say, okay, give us our 100,000 and get the money out of our hands?
I mean, I think we will get what we're owed, and then everything else is just dispersed. There could be other lien holders on a property, so we'd have to take it on a case-by-case basis, but basically we have a receivable on our books for principal, interest, and eventually the legal fees that will land attached to that property.
Sorry, when you were talking about, go ahead.
Yep. So I guess those are the main points of the revenue budget. I don't know if there's other questions that want to be addressed in there.
We just had a full day on Thursday, but any other questions on the budget that developed over the weekend or based on changes?
Well, the first proposal. The 7.85 was terrible. This one's even worse. I really think we're gonna have to do some belt tightening. I had a. Let's see. Where's my questions here? Just a couple I have a question and a couple concerns. So, Green Mountain Transit, if they can't guarantee bus service, do we have to honor their request?
That's a question for you.
And
We
other than
we
the
have to give
senior
them
bus stuff.
we have to give them a year's notice, and so we can't not pay them if they give us an assessment.
But
We have to give them a year's
they're not,
fiscal year's notice.
but they're not giving us any service. Why?
They would lower their assessment if they're not going to give us the service. Their hope is that the legislature will come to their rescue and give them money that then they can continue our service and then still assess us the fees for that. That's what their hope is.
Okay. So we've already paid them. Have we paid them money towards? Because we're 1 year off. Have we already given them money towards their 2025 request?
Yeah, as I recall, I think we've paid 2 out of 3 invoices for the year that split it equally.
So technically, the third one comes after the 1st of July. Is that or not?
No, we'll pay that third one. I think it's February or March might be the due date for that installment.
Okay, but then if there's then you wouldn't have to pay them anymore though if they didn't honor their.
I mean, that would be the end of our fiscal 25 commitment.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So do we still have to give them? So if we told them now, that's more than a year.
It's by fiscal year, so we could tell them now that we don't want to be a member in fiscal year 2027. So we still have to we have to pay for FY26 if they assess us something.
Yeah, so big question mark, but when they were here and asked the question about proration for removal of weekend service for the Essex bus, I believe starting in December next month.
It's gone.
Or was it
The weekend bus is gone in December. Yep.
And then the full route
It's June 1st.
It seemed as though there was some informal agreement that there would be following conversations around reduction.
Well, I've been to a couple meetings. I haven't seen any progress, but.
I'm supposed to hear this week
Okay.
as to what they're asking.
Ethan?
I have a question with our agreement. And, your long-standing history of knowing all the old agreements. Is there an agreement on the amount, or can we fund them with $1?
We have to give them what they assess us. Because
Because
they are a municipality, they have the authority, they have the authorization to assess a fee, and our membership agreement says that we will pay it. Yeah,
No matter what the increase is.
no matter what it is. Yeah.
However, the good news is with one full fiscal year's notice, we should know what the legislature is going to do by, I'm just going to say April, May timeframe, which gives us time to send a warning, a notice by the end of fiscal 25, so that would take effect at the end of fiscal 26. But
that doesn't help us now, though.
It does
Right.
not. Yeah.
We're
right.
paying for something we're not going to get,
So
basically.
there's a year we're just kind of at we have to do it.
Okay. My second concern, I'm going to stir stuff up here. Essex Rescue continues to ask for more and more money. They have not shown any outward signs of additional attempts at fundraising. They haven't added anybody to their board. We're giving funds to them that we have absolutely no say or control over as to what they're being used for. So I have a real concern that that situation hasn't really improved. Yes, they presented their budget, but yes, I still don't see this continually huge, I mean, amounts of increase. I don't know how to, what I'm saying is that we're giving an entity money that we have absolutely no control over how it's being spent.
So a couple of reactions there. I mean, I think their increase is up 5.5%. So I do understand where they're coming from, and a few years back when they asked for that 200% increase and then 50% increase, and it was after years of not much of an increase. I would much rather have a 3, 4, 5% increase year over year that we can understand, and rather than every 10 or 15 years getting a 40, 50, 60, 100% increase. As for the board, I think Ethan is on the board. The problem is that the other towns aren't really meeting. We've tried to convene, we've tried to get together. It's been a struggle to try to coordinate people to meet. One idea that's come up that I do think is worth exploring more, but have not had the opportunity to yet, is do we enter into some sort of scope of work contract, MOU, where we can clarify what their expectations are and vice versa. So I think that's worth exploring. And then just the rescue is hard. EMS is hard.
And I
we
understand
don't have
that part.
I think Ethan spoke very well about it last week. It's just, I don't think we can build a better mousetrap, and it's a statewide issue. That's everything from staffing to Medicare reimbursements to
I just
on
wish
and
they'd
on and
increase
on.
their fund. I mean, we recommended doing that fundraising letter in June when people had money, not at Christmas time when there's no money for them to, buy the extra subscription. But
They did just get one last week.
I know, but it's December, January. I mean, this isn't. We do it twice a year. Pay half now, pay half. You might get more. I don't know. Anyway, that was just one. And then my other thing is I think we need to have a discussion about ending the stipend program.
She was looking for a reaction.
I'm just,
Thank everyone.
And I yeah. Yeah.
I'm just,
We got to tighten our belts and we've got to cut down and
I'm gonna just respond to the Essex Rescue thing real quick, because
That's fine.
I apologize if I didn't relay the message to the board in the manner that I probably should have.
Sorry.
But we kind of knew throughout since middle of spring, roughly, that they were gonna have an increase this year. I think the biggest complaint that we still kind of have, I'm gonna say you might have this with me, is service level. They can't find help. They went full time, they went per diem, they're still having a hard time running one bus around. So I think that Greg's exhausted so much time. All the other towns kind of gave up, and in the back of my mind, I think about the conversation earlier. Somebody spewed it out earlier. It was something about $33 million for a fire station. That's because that fire station includes an EMS bay, and now you have EMS on town, and add in another $200,000 operating budget for 2 full-time employees and 1 ambulance. And then you realize that there's 11,000 people in Essex, and you have 2 ambulances, and now the fire budget is as much as the police budget. And you're $8, $9, $10 million in public emergency services. I don't think that the town is ready for that. I don't think that that's out of the dreams. I really believe that in the next 10 years, there's going to have to be decisions made that emergency services and, whatever, the library, the town hall, if you want to add that stuff in there. But there's going to come a time of need when the town in Essex Rescue is not promised, look at Green Mountain Transit. There's only so much that these small corporations can do before they run out of mechanisms to stay afloat. And I think that's a real possibility for us to have to be prepared for. Is what would that do to our budget? $1 million would be 10% right there, right? Probably closer to 13 now.
I'm trying to think of the number. I think 114,000 was 1%, so we'll call that 9.
That's right.
It's
the
9.
budget's getting so big now, right, for down under.
Yeah.
But my question was going to be, I only have one quick question for you today. The rest of them, I'm going to wait till we're making decisions. But when we talked about the police salaries, so I looked at allowance for vacancies, and we actually, it looks like a decrease, but we only added 2,500. And my question was that I was under the assumption that we were going another 5% this year.
Allowance for vacancies?
Yeah.
We stayed at 10%, and it's just patrol. Dispatch is fully staffed. For the first few years we did it, we had an allowance for patrol and dispatch. I think it was last year we eliminated the dispatch.
Yeah,
vacancies.
last year we eliminated dispatch. It only remains in patrol right now.
Only on patrol. So
it's 10%.
That's why. Because when I look at 2024, we did $363,000, right? So you eliminated the 5%, you never put it back in, and the other 5%.
What's the 5%?
$53,000.
Sorry, what page?
And not including inflation from 24 to 26.
What page are you
What
on?
page are you on?
Police operating, page 62. Allowance for vacancies, summary. Summary allowance for vacancies.
What's the code for that?
There's no code. It's just in the expenditure summary. It's the last summary.
Yep.
Okay.
So if you look at 24, I believe that was 85%.
No.
That wasn't 85% in 24?
No, 90 is the lowest we've.
Yeah.
Okay.
2024 just includes 10% allowances in both patrol and dispatch. The current year only has patrol as a 10% allowance, so that's why that 2025 budget piece is going down. I think the 55,000 that you're referencing.
Right. And here's my point to be made here. In all of those years, never have we overspent in that category. So why are we eliminating $50,000? That's a 0.5%. You could put us back at 7.85.
Well,
I'm losing the 50,000 now. Where is
So
that?
if you look at 2024 budget,
Yep.
you subtracted $363,000.
Mm-hmm.
Proposed budget is 310.
Mm-hmm.
But we've already made this step though in 2025's budget, because that 2025 budget number is 308,000.
Right, and you had a surplus of you can't tell me yet, but it's probably you were probably under 500,000, so you got a surplus of $200,000 again. So you can't take and take and take and take and then say, well, we have $750,000 in fund balance again because we overspent on the police on the same line item that we've been overspending on since 2019 when I first started voting here. Not 1 year since I've lived here have you overspent on that line item, ever. You've never met the line item, you never overspent the line item, ever.
I would contend that in the last couple years that I've been here, it's
been close.
A 10% number for the patrol being understaffed is quite reasonable.
But it's never been fulfilled.
It's never. Are we?
The number
we're
has
trying
never
to
been
fill.
satisfied. You've always
Which
been
number
under.
though? Like the total salaries or that allowance, I guess.
The allowance, right?
Well, allowance for
Well,
vacancy.
the allowance is not going to perpetuate itself in an actual number. It's going to
Fund balance.
ball itself up.
In the fund balance.
Well, in fund balance,
Every year.
No,
But the thing is,
hold on. Hold on. Sorry, I'm going to jump in.
Yeah.
So, police salaries,
Yeah.
for the sake of round numbers, $3 million a year.
Yep.
We're saying we're
300,000.
gonna do this allowance for vacancy. We're gonna raise 207. Wait, we're gonna knock out 2.7 million. We're gonna raise 2.7 million for police salaries. So we're knocking out that $300,000 right there. That doesn't show up in fund balance. That just shows up in money that we are not collecting.
Yeah, we're not collecting that money.
3.
So you're suggesting increase that allowance to
Increase.
vacancies.
Back to, at minimum, the number that we used in 2024.
But I
Because-
think we also need, sorry, I don't mean to cut
Yeah.
you off, but I was going to make this earlier. I think Dan, keep me honest here.
Okay.
But I think in the 2024 budget, we were also accounting for vacancies in dispatch and
Correct.
other
Yes.
areas
Yes.
Yeah.
that no longer exist.
Right.
So the only vacancies, from what I understand, that exist are in patrol.
Which we had 7 of this year.
Which, you know, in fiscal 25, we're funded
That's more
at
than
10%
of the
vacancies
force.
within patrol.
Right?
We,
That's more
well,
than
we
10% of
have,
the force.
we have
There's-
6 right now. But we hire
Yeah.
people, they come, they go. We were at one point in the
Okay,
past year.
I said what I wanted to say.
No, no, I
You don't
understand-
have
I
to
understand what
argue
you're
about it.
saying.
The facts
No, no.
are there. If you want to print out all the
I
numbers
just-
on what got spent the last 6 years, I'd love to see them presented to the public.
Yeah, I understand
I
what
would
you're
love to see
saying.
that.
I think we can take a look at,
Because it's there.
I think we can take a look at, historically what it's been. That's kind of what that 90% is based on. Historically,
We've
done
never
that.
filled
We'll
it.
take a closer look at whether that's right or not. The challenge is that sometime in the past year, we were down to 1 vacancy.
Yeah.
Right.
And at any
And then
point
we
in
had a
time,
bunch
you
of
can come to the
retirements,
select
and now
board
we're
and
at
ask for the money if those positions get filled. But when you put that money in the budget, you're taking taxpayer money that you know you can't fulfill, and then you're putting it in the fund balance. If you say, hey, listen, in the past 6 years, we've only filled 82% of the police force, active duty. Okay, so let's fund it at 85. Give me 5 more percent,
Yeah.
right? Then, all of a sudden, this miracle happens, and there's 90% of our force. In a simple request to the select board, you can come and say, okay, we went conservative for 85%. We've got a great pool of candidates, and we can fill. Let's say we can fill it to 100%. I need to be approved to hire these people. It's going to cost $150,000. You know, there's plenty of money left over in the fund balance because you got that 15% that you do not have to keep 15% of. You can spend any amount of it. In the next budget year, it could be simply corrected with the fund balance from the following year. You know, tell me a year when Essex hasn't had a fund balance, because it hasn't happened since I've lived here. So that, it's just over and over and over and over again that we overspend money that we're not even spending. And
6 vacancies, I believe he said 3 are currently going through the academy, or they're going to start in January.
That's the hope.
So that would bring us to the 90% filled for patrol. So does that,
for 4 months out of the year.
well, this is for the 26 budget. So
Alright, but you're
they
gonna
would be, They
fulfill-
would be onboarded.
You're
and-
fulfilling January 1st to July 1st.
Right, but that's under the current budget. We're talking about 26 at this point that wouldn't start until July 1. So they would be, like, for budgeting purposes,
Budgeted.
if they go
100%.
through the academy and, they're there, they will be cutting back on that vacancy rate for July 1. And Andy, go ahead.
So starting this year in the police agreement, we had to start refunding fund balance associated with the police department to the city of Essex Junction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that amount was like $8,000.
Yeah, that was not
It's
only
not.
police. That included assessing. That was the whole city package of all of our shared service agreements.
So it's not a big number.
The police was a big number. We can pull those numbers. I'll make sure they're in the next packet. We'll discuss them then.
But it was only $8,000.
It wasn't $8,000.
It was only $8,000.
That
We
was
had-
after everything was
we
all
had-
said and done
we
with
had-
finance assessment.
So you're interrupting me,
Clerk.
Ethan. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's one point. The other point I wanted to make is, do you really want potential officers that we are fully funding the police force, and if they do have full funding, they still have to come and ask us for money because we're not funding it completely. And so, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go to defunding the police.
Never once did I say defunding the police, just to throw that little term out there. That's not what I said. I said we should accurately budget for the town of Essex to be where they need to be.
Then you have to cut positions to do that.
Greg, go ahead.
I do. I hear.
I'm all
No,
set.
no.
Let's please
I do
move
hear what you're
along.
saying, and I do think we will get
Thank
you some
you.
better numbers about what is the actual salary line for police, what are we actually spending year over year. And I think that can help us inform the historical average for the past few years and see if that's worth having a discussion about increasing or decreasing that 90%. I do want to circle back to the fund balance thing for a moment. We are not trying to create fund balance. We're not trying to do that. It happens. I'd rather come in a little bit below the budget than above the budget. Dan and I have talked as we do the fund balance assignments this year. We're going to present the breakdown of where it comes from. It can come from any number of places. Sometimes it's staffing shortages. Sometimes it's interest revenue. For many years, we were budgeting $17,000 of revenue. Now we're bringing in $350,000. That year, we generated a lot more fund balance because we're bringing more money in. Sometimes we're successful with grants, and we have some grant money that comes in more than expected. So I just want to clarify that we are not trying to create fund balance. When it comes in, it's a nice thing to have, and it's a nice decision point to make, but we are not taxing people with the intention of keeping their money.
And Dan, if I could make one more ask for what gets brought back, could you bring back what that breakdown was of, I'll say the underspend that we needed to give back to the city?
Yes, and in order to categorize it more in the subcategories. Yeah, no doubt.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I can just add here, I took a look at just what would a 1% increase on that allowance do. So say it went from within patrol from 10 to 11%. We would add about $31,000 in expenses, and half of that would obviously be assessed to the city. So we're talking about a net effect of about 0.13 for each 1% of increasing that allowance, just to kind of give you a reference point of, starting to look internally. If we had to adjust that number, what could that look like? Is it 10%? Could it be 15%? I agree, fiscal year 25, we have 6 people now. We're running, but at the time, when we're budgeting fiscal year 25,
We're doing the same thing again.
well, I think we're expecting to try and land with 3 vacancies or less in fiscal 26. And that's 10% of our staff in that area.
Kendall?
Well, I'm just going to say that this segues into, we're going to end up doing the same thing with the fire department because they're having such a difficult time finding any people at all. And they've got a big bump coming this year, and it's all in all likelihood probably not going to get all those folks either. So, I mean, we've done that across a lot of departments with recreation, parks, and things. You just can't find people, and you budget for them. So,
Yeah. Well, and I also think, and I don't know if this is the contract potential that was on executive, but also understanding that we don't know the impact of upcoming negotiations for salaries and wages, what that impact will be to the budget. I think this is going to be a continuing conversation until we get closer to the point where we need to warn something.
I mean, I'll just say I'd like to see that fund balance out of the budget. There's been so many towns, and the public thinks this, is that you cover expenses with a fund balance. They know that it's being subsidized, and everybody worries, well, what about when this fund balance goes? I mean, automatically you've got to raise your budget a couple % or more depending on how much fund balance you're using. So I just hope we can at least, at a minimum, stick to what's proposed here, that it be done in another budgeting year.
I appreciate your direct thoughts.
Would this be time to talk about the capital transfers that are in the budget?
If they're in the budget, I think they're free game.
I would just note that you've increased the capital transfers, and I don't understand why there's such a reluctance to increase the capital tax rate
And
when you're actually almost raising as much capital in your operating budget, which increases your operating budget, as you are by your capital tax rate.
Excuse me.
So I would just point that out.
You want all of our goals today, or are we just giving the rough
That's all I
ones?
get to say.
How does that?
I guess I'm not, well,
Say that once again, Kendall. What?
Pardon?
I guess I didn't understand what you were asking.
Well, back when we voted on the capital tax,
Right.
20 years or however long it was ago, the idea was that you're going to fund your capital with a capital tax. That's why you have a capital tax.
Right.
Because you're supposed to present a capital budget that has X money that you need,
Right.
and you fund it with your capital tax rate. So when you look on your tax bill, you see you're paying 3 cents, and that covers all of your capital costs.
Okay.
We're not even covering half of our capital costs with the capital tax.
Got it.
And when you increase the operating budget, you've got probably, 114,000. You've got $575,000 of capital in here. So that's what, 4%? 5% of your operating budget. So you're not looking at a 7%, you're looking at a 2 or 3%. So it's just, I don't understand why we're so reluctant to switch that from the voter, because the higher our operating budget is, we're paying our human service grants based on our operating budget. We pay a number of other things based on what your budget is. So that is the same song and dance I've given every year. But
Yeah, and unfortunately, until we complete the reassessment, we won't know what that impact will be on capital. So it's hard to
see, but
identify what those. Go
not to cut you off, but my point on that is that yes, the capital tax can go up, but it can also go down.
Mm-hmm.
If you do a reassessment and all of a sudden we don't need 8 cents for a capital tax, we only need 5 cents, you lower the tax rate of the capital. It's that simple. It doesn't have to stay too high. But we're losing ground. Every year we're losing ground on what we need. We're looking at big capital expenses coming up, and we're looking at using the fund. Dan said that right in the thing, is that, well, we're going to be down to like 2 million in our capital for so long. So I think it's very important that this really gets looked at, because you can't go out all of a sudden and say, well, we've been spending 3 cents, well, now we need 15 cents. I think it's a lot easier to get a couple cents here or a cent there, and based on need, because any reasonable person would look at all the numbers and every information that we provide and say, you need more capital, or switch this money that you're putting in the budget over to your capital rate. So the two are supposed to be fairly separate. Towns never have funded their capital budgets the way they're supposed to. They do the capital budgets mostly because it's kind of a requirement, but they don't put the funds in because it's a hard decision by the board. It's really hard, because the board has to go to the residents and say, this is what you need for capital.
So.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. When the reassessment is final, and I know that I asked this question last week, but my brain is starting to not brain. It's getting to be, yeah, it's starting to get that time. So reassessment, hypothetical, is done June 1st. Those updated tax rates go into effect with the August, September, so they would impact FY26.
If the reappraisal is done on that time frame, yes.
Okay. I'm just thinking that, when that happens, we will know the impact on FY26 of reappraisal, and adjust from there. So it's kind of like chicken and the egg. Do we want to increase the capital tax and have that go into effect with FY26, but also by virtue of the capital tax being based on the assessment, also hitting with that increase as well in the same year? And I don't know whether I'm making sense right now or not.
I understand
but,
completely.
Being able to understand what those drivers are and where it came from, given that it would be happening in the same fiscal year, it may make it more difficult to tease out those drivers if they happen at the same time.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with what you're saying.
Okay, then I will leave it at that.
Dawn, Andy, any other questions, comments? Ethan.
Do we want all of our goals, or are we holding for a different day?
What would you prefer?
I guess I'd rather not go through line by line, but if there's
It's a big goal.
yeah, if there's like one big line
Yeah.
to look at it, if there's big, conceptual things like capital or
No, I'm not
staffing
talking
stuff, then
capital.
yeah. I'm
Capital.
there's an example of a big
Go
picture thing
well
versus
with
versus line 132 with 50.
No, I just want to talk about the fire department.
Ethan, what page are you on?
I'm on page 81.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I colored in the 8.
Nope, that's good.
Remember if it was a 3 or an 8.
Nope, appreciate it. Go ahead.
So I was just looking at the professional services, and I see that we're $7,500 for the proposed 26. And I was trying to remember if there was anything specific that they were trying to do this year. Like 18,000. But historically, I even looked back on a couple previous years. There was never spending over I would say $3,500 if I remember exactly correct. I think it was $3,250 in 21. But my proposal there is to change the 7,500 to 2,500, and then on the same thing with the salaries, part-time salaries, a 64.1% increase. I would recommend only doing a 25% increase, or excuse me, take 25% off from the 64% increase, and have the conversation to allow the manager to fill hires there also. There's a savings there of approximately $50,000. Between the both of them, it's about 53, apologize. No, $55,000, give or take.
So reduce the salary line
By 25%.
The part-time salary line, yeah.
Part-time salary line by 25%.
25% of
The proposed one?
Reducing the increase from
$561,720.
So yeah, reducing the increase that's proposed from 64% to 39%.
The increase is
Okay.
$219,520. The 25% decrease would put you around $150,000.
Okay.
So
And in that same sense, I would have the ability with the town manager that if those positions can be filled, fill them, and we'll fund them.
So, if I can respond to that, quickly, and I can talk to Chief Cole about the professional services line. It says in here, I think he spoke to this on Thursday. The cost for background checks, medical exams are going up, but I can get some more information on that. The salary line is a little bit more tricky. So part of that is we're not getting great volunteer responses to calls. Last year, you might remember we had put together a shift stipend, trying to get people to sign up for shifts in the evenings and the weekends to always have somebody to be able to respond. We rolled that out. It's not been effective. People haven't signed up for it. Went back to the fire department back in the summer, had some conversations with them. The fire chiefs have been getting input from the membership. They're saying that's not, that shift stipend wasn't going to really incentivize them. So what they said would incentivize them is to increase the minimum call pay. So, right now, if everyone goes out, they get a minimum of 2 hours per call. They said that increasing that minimum call amount would drive more volunteerism, drive better response. And there's a whole slew of issues with, being called out to non-emergency events, going to repeat offenders for stuff. This is just one part of their challenges. Within the budget for the current fiscal year 25, we were able to eliminate that shift stipend piece, and we think we can pay for a 3-hour minimum per call. So we've rolled that out. It's been in place for about a month and a half now. There was a really slight uptick in call response in October. We're not totally sure if it's significant or if it was just a blip, but we're trying to track it over November and December. Hope to have some more information by the end of December, beginning of January. We've told the members that if it's effective, we've budgeted for a 4-hour minimum for calls. So this is trying to incentivize that call response. If this 3-hour thing isn't really working, there's a potential to reduce that. But this is an attempt of trying to get members to respond. Also wrapped into that are increasing the per diem pay by, I think, $1 an hour, increasing some of the, the baseline fire pay to try to incentivize people. Part of the challenges are these are people who are volunteering. They have jobs, and so to wake up at 3 a.m. to go out for a call, they're starting to make decisions about what's right for their family, what's right for their mental health, what's right for their pocketbook. So this is an attempt at that. If you want to cut it by the 25% of that increase, I think, we can do that. And it's just going to be a question of, is it going to be successful or not? I do think we're going to hopefully have some more data over the next couple months to see if we're trending in the right direction. So sorry, that was a lot of background to that thought.
I just want to ask a clarifying question. I think are you asking about treating this the same way as you are police and giving it a vacancy allowance, adding a vacancy allowance line in here? So it's not cutting the budget; it's adding a vacancy allowance.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Understood what you were talking for.
To make sure
I didn't hear the
yeah.
follow-up.
you heard that.
Yeah,
I will never defund the police.
Yeah, I realize now after that discussion about this that
I'm just a poor guy trying to pay my taxes.
yeah,
Okay?
I was unfortunately heard it wrong or misunderstood it or went in the wrong direction.
I can go to
I
the
totally apologize for
town
that.
office
Yeah.
or the library or the Parks and Rec. I can give you whichever one you want next, or I can save them for later.
No, good conversation, because
Thank you.
I also
appreciate
misunderstood you, so.
I'm easily misunderstood.
Hooray
my
for
downfall.
communication.
You're good.
It is currently 10 o'clock. Do we want to keep going on the budget, understanding that we have another meeting on December 2nd?
We also have an executive session coming
Yes.
up, so no,
Yeah.
we're good.
Okay. I am still unpacking Thursday. I will continue to unpack what I've heard this evening.
Just pulled napkins out of here. Me too.
Okay, so with that, the next item on our agenda is for executive session, so I'm gonna hop to the reading file. Board member comments.
I always have a couple comments.
What's that?
I said I always have a couple comments.
You were just smiling at me and it made me smile.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Dan.
I do just want to say thank you to Deborah Flannery for her service on the Housing Commission, and appreciate the offer to stay engaged as needed. And I will thank Ian Carroll for sending his thoughts on the DRB and Planning Commission overlap. So if folks haven't read it, I just wanted to point that out. Any other items for the reading file?
I was just gonna say, make sure you read the impact study.
Yeah, will that be on next agenda?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, it will be.
December 2nd. Yep, it is dense. So I appreciate the
It is.
the
It is.
advanced copy. And with that, I would entertain a motion for executive session.
I move that the select board make the specific findings that general public knowledge of contracts that place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Thank you, Don. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andy. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0.
I move that the select board enter into executive session to discuss contracts pursuant of 1 VSA 313A1A to include town manager, deputy town manager, and assessor.
Thank you, Don. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andy. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. We are in executive session. And
Hi, Ken.
will we be back for
Yes.
any motions after
Bobby?
executive? I don't think so. Okay. So no, we will not be, we will only be returning to adjourn.
Isn't there a decision that has to be made after we come out?